Yes, here we go. A very good morning to you, my dear friends, in Grenada and elsewhere. Thank you very much for joining us for this weekend's edition of Sundays with George Grant. I'm George Grant, and today happens to be the 6th day of October. Can you believe it? 1 week almost gone already. It's going to be a good morning. Kind of cloudy out there this morning, but the sun's shining through. And looks like we may have yet another wonderful day in the Spice Isle. Let me, before I even get into the rundown, I see that the race is on this morning. And guess what? I think it's the first time he's winning this race, Mr. Fitzroy Adams. First up this morning on social media there, and Peter Bishop's number 2 again. Happy Sunday to you too, Anthea. Good to see you. Arthur Langine is saying good morning and looking forward to a good show. Boys, so are we. I certainly am. And Claude Putner is there saying good morning. And wishing you guys a happy Sunday. Mr. Dennis Perkins, let's see, where is he? He is in London this morning. Giving up Carriacou for a little while, Dennis? Maybe. Maybe not. So yeah, he say good morning to you guys. Hopes that we're all well. We're doing okay. Kipling Francis is reminding you guys to share and of course sending God's blessings as well. So my dear friends, let's get into the rundown for this morning's program. We're going to begin as always with the buzz, where we will present to you a reading from the Holy Scriptures. And yeah, she's here with us this morning. Well, not in person, but she did send her contribution in last night, little angel. And then we get into our 2 editorials. The first from the Grenada Advocate, which is captioned, Cuba survives the U.S. embargo. Okay. I guess you can say that. Despite everything, Cuba is still around and kicking butt. The New today is captioned, many issues involving the police. Yeah, boy, the police have been making the news a lot in recent times. And just wait for a little bit. When we get to the editorials, you'll find out what are some of the issues they're talking about there. Then we move into our features. Features. The ceremonial opening of Parliament took place a couple of days ago. And hey, we're not going to bring you the whole thing. That lasted a couple of hours. But we're just going to bring you the throne speech, which was delivered by Her Excellency, the Governor General. Dame Cecile LaGrenade will present that to you as one of the first things we have under our features this morning. And then, you know, this week, the Integrity Commission issued a statement saying that the investigation into the MNIB is now underway. Well, on Thursday, as we do every Thursday morning, we had Mr. Allan Bierzynski with us, and that's one of the things he addressed, this investigation into the Marketing and National Importing Board. And so you'll hear what Mr. B had to say this morning. As always, you'll find them very informative and, of course, amusing. Yeah. And the final item we have under our features this morning, actually it's the only person I have coming in here live this morning. Everybody else pre-recorded, Governor General and the part with Allan. Mr. Cajecton Hood, who is a former Attorney General here in Grenada, he's definitely involved in this MNIB scandal. He is the attorney for Mr. Rule Edwards, as far as I know. And he issued a statement a couple of days ago, which I do urge you to go take a look at, because he makes a number of points there, very salient points, and talking a lot about not just the investigation, but especially the code of conduct when it comes to the Integrity Commission, the Grenada Integrity Commission. So I urge you to read that if you can before he arrives here this morning. He should be in here at about 11 o'clock this morning. And he's suggesting to Grenadians, it's time to wake up, pilgrims, time to act. And guess what? He's not just saying it's time to act. He believes that there are things that you can do. First of all, by becoming aware of the facts. And that's what he intends to do this morning. He intends to make sure that you know a lot of the things. You know, a lot of people go about without really doing their homework and knowing, let alone understanding the facts. And he intends to enlighten you a little bit this morning. So there you have it. Cajecton Hood, former Attorney General of Grenada. He's going to be joining us this morning at about 11 o'clock. And he's going to be in here live. So those of you out there on social media, please feel free to key your comments, suggestions, recommendations, criticisms, whatever. Put them out there on Facebook for us. And that's the reason why I'm suggesting that you go take a look at the article which I published on his behalf a couple of days ago on Grenada Broadcast. Let me get back here to social media for just a wee bit. And hello, Sean. Hope you're recovering nicely from your brush with that hurricane this past week. Margaret saying happy Sunday. Yeah, Margaret. Oh, Mags, Mags. As soon as I get through this morning, I'm going to the kitchen. And John Nosyneck says, good morning, Gigi and the rest of the world. Welcome to the classroom. Yeah, man. It's nice to be here, and I am delighted that you're here too, John. Dennis Perkins saying, only for a short while, George. A little while ago, I wasn't sure whether Dennis was in England or at his second home in Carriacou. Well, he's in England. He says they're only for a short while, which means he's going to be back in Carriacou sooner or later. Spice Babes Duncan saying, good morning, good to see you. And Ernesto says, great rise, happy Sunday, Gigi and family. Thanks for joining us, Ernesto. John says, George, the only things people don't gossip about is the truth. Ain't that a shame? Ain't that a shame, John? But it's a fact. It's just one of those facts of life. Oswald Lewis is also saying good morning to us. Good to see you, Ozzy. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, folks, now that we've got the initial batch of folks on there, I'm sure that there'll be a lot more joining us as the morning goes on, because it's an interesting program coming your way. And I know that they have seen the rundown, which we published sometime yesterday afternoon on Facebook and on Grenada Broadcast. So they can't afford to miss that. They'll be here. All right, let's see here. It's coming up on 10 minutes after 9 o'clock. Let's take our first little break, and then we'll get down to brass tacks.
Because your vehicle is a necessity, being roadworthy is critical. Hubbard's Motor Department introduces its new tire and battery sales and service outlet located at Building Supplies Compound in Grandans, close to the Sugar Mill Roundabout. Available are a wide range of competitively priced tires, maintenance-free batteries, oils and lubricants. Keeping in mind your busy schedule, this outlet is equipped to provide you with fast and reliable service. Simply drive in and you'll be delighted with your service experience. For more information, contact 440-2087. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank. And there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
You don't know how many hurricanes will be coming this season, so you need to be prepared. At Hubbard's Hardware and Building Supply Departments and Food Fair Supermarkets, everything from canned foods, flashlights and batteries, to plywood, tarpaulin, lanterns, roof repair kits, water tanks, etc. are available. For over 90 years, we've helped you prepare for and recover from storms. Hubbard's Hardware, Food Fair Supermarkets, and the Grenadian General Insurance, an integral part of your hurricane preparedness plan.
Alrighty, folks, it didn't take long for you guys to get on my case this morning. Didn't take long at all. Margaret here is telling John, just a reminder, John, that Chef GG owes us pictures of his kitchen exploits. Yeah, what Margaret is talking about is that, I think it was on Friday, I mentioned that, I was going to do a little cooking, and of a recipe which she provided, by the way, sort of Chinese stir fry, I think it is. And I did promise that I would take pictures and hopefully show them to you this morning. Now that's assuming that I was able to get to the kitchen yesterday and do that cooking. Well, this is a genuine excuse. I did not get to the kitchen yesterday. Just a little too much work preparing for this morning's program, a little too much work. However, I did promise Margaret that once I get off the air this morning, wash my hands and everything, put on the old apron, and get to the kitchen. Fire extinguisher is always set to go, just in case, And so is the camera. I did promise that I'd take those pictures. And so I'm not going to be able to show them to you today because they just won't be ready. But tomorrow morning, I intend to do that. Okay? All right? All right. Let's see who else is here now. John responds to Margaret by saying, I'm waiting for the invite to dinner. John, you don't need an invitation, man. What you have to do is just let me know in advance that you're coming, and we'll try and prepare something for you. Make sure your insurance policy is intact, just in case. Put a little too much of this and not enough of that and whatever. So, okay. Now, let's get down to brass tacks. This week's edition of The Buzz begins, as always, with a reading from the Holy Scriptures. Later, Jesus appeared to the 11 as they were eating. He rebuked them for their lack of faith and their stubborn refusal to believe those who had seen him after he had risen. He said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved. But whoever does not believe will be condemned. And these signs will accompany those who believe in my name. They will drive out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes with their hands. And when they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all. They will place their hands on sick people, and they will get well. After the Lord Jesus had spoken to them, he was taken up into heaven, and he sat at the right hand of God. Then the disciples went out and preached everywhere. And the Lord worked with them and confirmed his word by the signs that accompanied it. Okay? That reading, by the way, came to you from Mark chapter 16, verses 14 to 20. Now, my dear friends, here's what she has to say this week. Little Angel, she captions her piece this week, lack of access to the truth. Well, here we go. I quote, lies, propaganda, fake news, and misrepresentations are common in many societies. And one of the biggest challenges facing Grenada and the world today is the lack of access to the truth. Grenadians are known to seek information and answers to questions of national interest. And in many cases, they were either ignored, challenged, or misinformed. Enough information in the public domain also suggests that the government controls the media in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Countries do not need governments that control the media and manipulate public opinion. Instead, they need high-quality news from independent sources. Manipulation threatens lives and has been found to be practiced by government agencies and political actors. Media platforms are being used to misinform, promote censorship, and undermine local institutions. According to Stephen Lewandowski from the University of Bristol, and I quote here, having a large number of people in society who are misinformed is absolutely devastating, unquote. A 2018 report prepared by Bradshaw and Howard of the University of Oxford, entitled Challenging Truth and Trust, a Global Inventory of Organized Social Media Manipulation, found evidence of formally organized media control in 48 countries. These countries had at least one political party or government agency using the media to manipulate public opinion. This was noticed particularly during elections when disinformation was spread, and whenever government perceived threats which often resulted because of unfairness, injustices, and unacceptable behavior. A nation cannot be built and will not continue to exist on falsehood. A typical example was the fall of apartheid in South Africa after 50 years, thanks to the late Nelson Mandela and others who struggled, were imprisoned, and stood up against the injustices of the regime. Closer to home, Grenadians also struggled with the 1979 revolution and its demise in 1983. This was another testimony to the inevitability of a nation built on falsehood. It is the Nelson Mandela or Nelson Mandelas of the world and those who care for the truth who will continue to suffer at the hands of others who don't. Those who have no regard for what is true and real survive because of manipulation and lies. Philip K. Dick defined reality as, quote, what continues to exist whether you believe it or not, unquote. But the truth must be told. It must be sought, and it must be known. Grenadians must continue to seek and know the truth before it is much too late. Signed, Little Angel. There you have it. Finger on the button again this morning, Little Angel. Thank you very much. Okay, let's scroll back here. Boy, you guys are pumping them out this morning. Let's see here. Ernesto Jose says, Bishop College in Carriacou is falling apart and needs urgent attention, Minister Emmeline Pierre. Yeah, we're hearing that cry quite a bit these days. Michael Alexander says, good morning, professor and class, looking for a great lecture. And at the end, we'll all end up with our doctorates, but not fake, but not fake ones. I hope this doesn't come across as a lecture. We're having fun, man. We're talking one-on-one, back and forth. Hey, nah. Anyhow, I understand where you're coming from, Michael. Okay, Pele Darbo is saying good morning to you guys and sending his best wishes. Anna Benjamin says, you and John are always welcome to BB's. Ah. Anna, do you work down at BB's? Boy, let me tell you, Anna, we were down there, I was down there with a friend who was visiting from Switzerland on Friday afternoon, yeah? We had a hoot. You guys do a fabulous shrimp. And as for the dessert, I'll tell you, we took some video of the meal, including the dessert, and sent that to Margaret. Last night, Margaret and I were on WhatsApp, and she was licking her lips at your dessert. I think that one's called the Brown Girl in the Ring, whatever. Great stuff, man. Chocolate cake and ice cream. Yeah. Oh, Anna, good to see you. We'll be back soon. When Margaret comes down here, we're going to have to bring her down. And okay, Anna says here she's listening to us at BB's this morning. Well, Anna, man, Anna, send some shrimp up here, man. Nah, I'm only kidding. But you guys do a terrific job. You know, one thing we noticed, for years, going to BB's, I've always been fascinated by the fact that you guys have a lot of signatures and inscriptions and so on that visitors to your restaurant have written all over the walls and pillars and everything. And I noticed on Friday that most of them are gone. Why did you guys take those down? Huh? I guess you're just cleaning them so that the people who come, I bet you receive a lot of visitors from the cruise ship, so I guess that when they come in for the upcoming season, they have room to write stuff. Yeah, you guys had a lot of those things, and it really adds to the ambiance of your little restaurant there right on the water. By the way, has anybody heard anything about the cruise ship season? This is October 6th. I have not heard a beep about the cruise ship season. Not a beep. We're going to have to go hunting this week, see what's happening. I'm sure there's going to be a cruise ship season. I'm hoping there's going to be a cruise ship season, but I haven't heard a word from the Tourism Authority. Anyhow, Penny Crawley says, make some biscuits for the gang, Gigi. Hey, wait a minute, guys. I have work to do. Want me to spend the rest of my life in the kitchen? Maybe not such a bad idea after all. You know, I'm having a hoot. Penny is somebody, when she visits here, she brings a lot of stuff, and we usually have a feast when she's here. Always so hard to see her go after a week. because, yeah, she's a good cook. Good cook. Very simple, but good cook. Mags and I have had one escapade in the kitchen a few weeks ago, and boy, she never let me forget about it. Boy, she let me have it. Oy, oy, oy. Anyhow, I'm looking forward to welcoming you back. Anna Benjamin, yeah, she says she's listening at BB's. John says, Anna, when I get down, I will drop in. Don't worry. Yeah, one of my favorite people to go to BB's with is John whenever he comes down from karaoke. John, looking forward to seeing you, man. But I'm also looking forward to coming up and sampling some karaoke cuisine. Yeah. They struggle in Zimbabwe, turned sour once Mugabe got controlled. Corruption. Okay, whatever. Ernesto says, Gigi, any update on the Saturday media lecture by the information minister on how to behave at news conferences? I have not heard a word about that meeting which MWAG was supposed to have yesterday. I'm not a member of MWAG, but I do hope the meeting came off, and I do expect that later on today I'll find out, what went down. Peter Belfont says, Sunday blessings to all at this particular time. George, Truth is being treated as an estranged partner in a troubled relationship here in Grenada. Backward thinking and regressive strides are the order of the day in Grenada. Ain't that unfortunate, Pedro? Unfortunate. Arthur Langine is acknowledging the piece done by Little Angel this morning. Anthea wants to know, where is BB's, George? Okay. BB's is at the end of the Carnage, Anthea, close to the fort. If you know where Nawasa has its office, they're right in the corner there. Lovely little restaurant. The restaurant actually sits on the water. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Wendy Ann Farry Simon is listening to us. Peter Belfont says, George, we have a problem with the lists. Remember NADMA's delayed hurricane shelter listing? Yeah, how could we forget? And Jeannie Pascal is also saying good morning and a happy Sunday to you folks. All righty, folks. I'll tell you what. Let's take another quick little break here, and then we'll get right into our editorials.
GRENADA Community Partnership Initiative, supporting health.
To the individuals who will be using these vehicles to serve the people, please ensure while we are using these tools that we use these tools in a manner that we will all be proud of. To GRENADA, a long-standing partner with us, a true testament of what can happen when private and public sector work together for the benefit of the people.
GRENADA, energizing our community.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Can I have a chicken lunch, please? Large.
Real nice today.
I don't want that.
Well, you just asked for a chicken lunch.
I don't have problem with the lunch. Afraid the container.
What is the problem with it?
These styrofoam containers, they don't good for the environment. They shorten with life.
What foolishness you telling me? So what you want me to use?
Put my food in this.
Where you get that?
At the food fair, where you could get all biodegradable food boxes and disposable food supplies like cups, plates, anything you could think about. Name it, it's there. And they don't harm the environment. Food fair, taking the lead in cleaning up and protecting the environment. Hey, like you take me advice, you get in your biodegradable food supplies.
Well, girl, I supporting who's supporting the environment. That is why I shop in at food fair.
Food fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets. Products distributed by Hubbard's agency, Kirani James Boulevard.
Alrighty, folks, let's see here now, 9:32. Anthea is asking if BB's is near to where Portofino restaurant was. Yes, Anthea. You know, there's a restaurant there. I think Portofino has now been replaced by something called Sales. Well, right behind that. They're just about adjacent to each other, right behind that. Check it out. Check it out. Anna, there you go. You got yourself a customer. Let's see here. Glenn Andrew Mark saying good morning from Michigan. Ryan Jabon's also saying good morning. Andrea St. B. Met says, Old Portofino might now be Sales Restaurant. BB's is next door. Absolutely, Andrea. Thank you so much for helping me out. Kipling Francis says, since we all know the problems in our country, why can't people get together, forget fear and everything else, and do something? Mass demonstrations, a good start. Well, let me tell you something about mass demonstrations. Let me tell you, in the last umpteen years, I have only seen one, what I would call mass demonstration in this place. There are tons and tons of little demonstrations where 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 20 people show up. When the teachers got irate, sometime last year, I think it was, or the year before, that's when I saw a mass demonstration. Peaceful, beautifully done, peaceful. But people just don't go out to demonstrate in this place. You can call upon them. No, they'd rather sit in the corner and go yakety, 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 yak. Nobody coming out. To the lady from BB's who's listening, now you also have the first one, Anthea, was from Georgia. Now Ryan Jabon says he has to eat at BB's Crabbat. Yummy. Check it out, guys. Okay, folks, where are we? Yeah, let's get down to the first of our editorials. This one was published in Wednesday's edition of the Grenada Advocate. It is captioned, Cuba survives the U.S. embargo. Recently, Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley addressed the subject of the American embargo on Cuba, something that has been in place for almost 60 years. She told the 74th United Nations General Assembly that the embargo had been causing hardships and believes the time is ripe for it to be lifted. The intervention on the part of Cuba is likely to create more discussion on that situation, even if the Caribbean island has been able to survive that episode for that length of time. The emergence of communist Cuba in the early 1960s had come at a grave time in world history. That was the Cold War between the then Soviet Union and the United States, as the two struggled for influence in the world, and more particularly in what was then the developing countries. Back in the early 1970s, 4 Caribbean countries, Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago, took a giant step in not only calling for an end to the embargo, but established ties with the Fidel Castro-led administration in Cuba. It was a bold step by the leaders at the time: Errol Barrow from Barbados, Forbes Burnham, Guyana, Michael Manley, Jamaica, and Dr. Eric Williams, Trinidad and Tobago. What that action did was end Cuba's isolation in the hemisphere, since, at the time, only a handful of Latin American countries, including Mexico, had relations with Cuba. That opened the door for others to follow. Nowadays, scholars believe that events which have unfolded since would be enough to indicate that the embargo has outlived its usefulness, and no matter how long it continues, it is unlikely to break the back of the Caribbean island. Cuba has emerged as a leading country in Latin America, with its healthcare, housing, education, and other social sector metrics rivaling or even surpassing those in other parts of the Americas. Indeed, many countries in the region, including Caribbean states, are known to utilize the services which Cuba offers in the above-mentioned areas. In spite of this, some Caribbean politicians have played the Cuban card by promising to strengthen the embargo, and have promoted a lot of this in Florida, where sizable anti-Castro groups currently reside. The situation, though, is that Cuba was able to withstand the embargo because of the strong relationship the country had forged with then Eastern Europe, and more so, the Soviet Union, which, in the immediate post-War II era, was a great rival to the mighty United States. When the Soviet Union collapsed around 1989-1990, it was thought that Cuba would have folded. It did not. Although the demise of the Soviet Union forced the authorities in Cuba to look at the way they were doing things, like how they managed the country and what was necessary to survive in a post-Cold War era. Well, they have. And today, Cuba is one of the leading tourist attractions in the Caribbean, thanks to investments in hotel infrastructure and broadening the base of their economy, once dominated by sugar. The embargo has hurt Cuba, but it did not bring the country to its knees, as the USA had hoped. Therefore, after 60 years, Cuba is still thriving some 90 miles south of the United States, and will continue to do so, embargo or no embargo. That, Pilgrims, is the editorial which appeared in this past week's edition of the Grenada Advocate. Let me get back here for just a minute. Ernesto says, Gigi, I heard your boy Toby was missing in action at the NNP meeting and maybe heading to be the new opposition leader. We're keeping an eye on that one. There's been a lot of talk over the years, and we'll see what happens. Hazel Ferguson is saying good morning. Hazel, girl, you got your butt kicked this morning, eh? No more first for you. Well, maybe Sunday, you have an excuse. John says, re-Cuba. Venezuela are sending crude oil to Cuba for free, allegedly, for storage. Trumpy won't be happy. Trumpy, I haven't heard that name before. I've heard him go at a lot of things, but never Trumpy. Okie dokie, folks. Good morning, Arthur. Ronnie Gittins is there. Russell Abraham, Judy Benoit. Yeah, la 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 la. Mikhail Blaze Robertson, Jeannie Pascal, Anthony DeRiggs. Oh my goodness, so nice to see all of you folks this morning. Please try and stick around, because let me tell you, we got a scorcher coming your way at 11 o'clock this morning. So please, please, please hang in there. Break time and we'll come on back.
In our part of the world, we need to be prepared for natural disasters like storms and hurricanes, even outside of the season. I'm sure you'll agree that keeping our loved ones, homes, and businesses safe is important. So, I came up with a few quick tips to help you stay safe. First, make a family disaster plan and ensure that everyone in your household is familiar and comfortable with it. Remember to add batteries and flashlights to your emergency kit. Now, for electrical safety. Familiarize yourself with your electrical panel, as it may be necessary to switch off the power during a storm or flood. Make sure you install a transfer or isolation switch to prevent your generator feeding electricity to Grenlec's line. If trees are too close to power lines, call Grenlec at 237 for advice. By following these easy steps, you will be well on your way to being hurricane ready. Don't be caught off guard by natural disasters. Prepare now. For more information, visit grenlec.com.
Because your vehicle is a necessity, being roadworthy is critical. Hubbard's Motor Department introduces its new tire and battery sales and service outlet located at Building Supplies Compound in Grandans, close to the Sugar Mill Roundabout. Available are a wide range of competitively priced tires, maintenance-free batteries, oils and lubricants. Keeping in mind your busy schedule, this outlet is equipped to provide you with fast and reliable service. Simply drive in and you'll be delighted with your service experience. For more information, contact 440-2087. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Alrighty, folks, this is the editorial which appeared in Friday's edition of The New Today. It is captioned, "Many Issues Involving the Police." The New Today is calling on the Royal Grenada Police Force, as a matter of grave urgency, to approach Interpol to help apprehend the man behind Legendway International, the building contractor company that allegedly scammed several locals of millions of dollars in a housing construction scam. This newspaper has first-hand knowledge of some of the persons affected by the Florida-based Orville Roberts, as two of them were directed by us to the police to file criminal complaints against the contractor. It is very unfortunate that the police were able to apprehend the very elusive Roberts, who was under investigation for many months, and allowed him to slip from their grasp. Not through the back door, but the front door at the Maurice Bishop International Airport. The police have a serious duty and responsibility to make amends for this major bungling on their part. The people who are affected by the Orville Roberts scam are, by and large, poor Grenadians who are trying to improve their lot in life. One of the persons who approached us to complain about giving the contractor $190,000 EC dollars in cash as a down payment to build a house is living in the United States and comes from ordinary stock in St. David. This is an individual who is doing more than one job during the cold and bitter winter months in New York in order to get a home for her eventual retirement, and was tricked by Roberts. The other is a young female who was trying to make a life on her own and borrowed 100,000 EC dollars from a local commercial bank to give to the Legendway International individual to start construction on her dream home in the St. David area. The New Today took a deliberate decision not to purchase the ordeal of these two individuals in an effort not to alert Roberts, but to pass on the information to the police to put them in a good position to arrest the individual whenever he touched down on Grenadian soil from the United States. The manner in which Mr. Roberts was able to move out of Grenada with such ease has left a bad taste in our mouths about the competence of some of the officers within the RGPF. The police force has a responsibility to use every means at their disposal, including Interpol, to bring Roberts back into Grenada to account to the several persons he has left in distress and financial misery. Acting Commissioner of Police Edwin Martin also has a task on his hand to determine whether there was no collusion between Roberts and some persons in the RGPF to facilitate the successful effort of the contractor to slip out of the island and not face prosecution in connection with a multi-million-dollar housing scam. This newspaper has obtained some sensitive information on what might have happened, but out of an abundance of caution will not divulge anything at this stage. However, Acting Commissioner Martin will have to determine whether any member or members of the force took advantage of a particular situation that developed to aid the Legendway International man to easily walk past immigration officers at MBIA and board a plane for Piarco in Trinidad and then transfer onto a Caribbean Airlines flight into Florida. The information seems to suggest that there might be a rogue cop or two who used a similar unfortunate occurrence to also facilitate a man facing criminal charges to get a second passport to attempt to leave the island. It should be noted that within days of the court ordering the individual to surrender his passport, he was able to report the said passport as lost and got another one without any checks being done by Immigration Department to ascertain the accuracy of the information provided to them by the man. The Commissioner of Police should be aware that there are bad apples in any police force the world over. In the case of Grenada itself, some of our law enforcement officials have been engaged in very questionable activities over the years that would leave any right-thinking person to conclude that bribery or spite are at play. There was an incident a few years ago when former Accountant General in the Ministry of Finance, Garvey Louison, filed a criminal complaint with the RGPF against an entertainer who was apprehended by the police in neighboring Dominica. The individual was deported, and the Dominica police communicated with their counterparts in Grenada that the suspect would be put on a plane that was passing through Grenada en route to Trinidad, and as such, an opportunity was presented for him to be arrested by the RGPF. This newspaper was told that nothing was done by the local police to pick up the suspect for questioning in light of the criminal complaint from Louison, and the man was allowed to enter the airport and leave the airport without a question being asked of him for an alleged crime committed against a Grenadian? Did somebody give the police high command instructions not to act in that particular situation? The same question can be asked about the main man behind Legend Way International. Did somebody engage in a particular act to assist him to leave the island? Mr. Commissioner, a lot of people in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique are watching and taking note of many issues involving the police and their activities. Okie dokie. Check it out. It's in Friday's edition of the New Today. That was their editorial. Back now. Back now. Let me see here. Ernesto says, I think other countries should take a page from Cuba, how to be independent than dependent, despite the odds against them. Good advice. John says, read Mr. Roberts. If you oil the right wheels, anything can happen on Grenada. Peter Belfont says, George, as a people, Grenadians are wary of mediocrity and lawlessness that appears to have been permeating our society these days. Kipling Francis says, we seem to forget the police force are not independent. Instead, they are dependent on the orders of higher authority. There are endless examples of such undertakings. Loyalty favored above ability. Okie dokie. All righty, folks, break time, and then we'll come back. I know you, oh, by the way, we've now been joined by Bernard Gilbert, Nicole Lindsay, Gemma Bain-Thomas. Hello, Gemma, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Dennis Charles is also with us, Janelle Samuel, Arthur Langoy, yeah, Bob Marisha. Okay, folks. Yeah, we're going to come back with, I know you've been waiting for this, the throne speech that was delivered this week. Hang in there. Here we go after this.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Alrighty, folks, many of you may or may not have seen the ceremonial opening of Parliament, which took place on Friday. And during the time, the throne speech was delivered by Her Excellency, Dame Cecile LaGrenade. For those of you who were not able to make it, sit back for the next 45 minutes or so and listen.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, as we gather here today at the start of the third session of the 10th Parliament, it is important that we express gratitude for the mercies granted by the Almighty, for His grace, His love, and the continuous blessings that He has bestowed on us as a nation. As we prepare to deliberate on matters of national importance, let us not forget our brothers and sisters in the Bahamas, many of whom are still reeling from the widespread devastation and hardship inflicted last month by Hurricane Dorian, one of the most powerful storms ever recorded in the Caribbean. Let us remember, too, that 15 short years ago, we were faced with a similar plight, having experienced the onslaught of Hurricane Ivan. Grenada's progress since 2004 has been nothing short of remarkable. The destruction wrought by Hurricane Ivan was equivalent to 200% of our gross domestic product. Despite this tremendous setback, our nation recovered and is currently on a sound economic footing, having achieved several consecutive years of economic growth that have earned it the distinction of being the fastest growing economy in the Caribbean. As 2020 approaches, we are fully cognizant of the fact that we must not only look to the future with hope and optimism. As architects of our destiny, we must shape the kind of future we want and create a Grenada of which we can all be proud. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, Grenada is doing well on several fronts. The economy is poised to record its 7th consecutive year of robust growth in 2019. Economic activity has been broad-based, with several sectors experiencing sustained expansion in the past 7 years. New jobs have been created in several sectors, leading to a steady decline in the unemployment rate in our country. General price increases, as measured by the inflation rate, have been low and stable, providing certainty for business investment and increasing the purchasing power of consumers. Several major projects in both the public and private sectors are underway across our tri-island state and are expected to significantly enhance our social and economic infrastructure, as well as build resilience to climate change. Public finances have shown sustained improvement, and as such, the public debt to GDP ratio has been on a steady downward trend over the past 5 years. Social protection programs and safety nets have been expanded to address the needs of the most vulnerable in our society, including at-risk youth, boys and young men, girls, women, and the elderly. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, my government remains fully committed to pursuing policies and programs conducive to macroeconomic stability and social progress, while protecting and preserving our natural environment. While we celebrate our collective achievements and successes, we are mindful that challenges persist. Indeed, long-standing constraints such as the small size of our economy, its narrow production base, and the heavy dependence on importing goods and services are being compounded by challenges in other areas such as climate change, rapid technological advances in artificial intelligence and robotics, among others. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, it is important to focus our attention and galvanize collective efforts to undertake concrete actions that will allow us to simultaneously consolidate our accomplishments and address our challenges. Collectively, we must forge ahead with a shared vision, unity of purpose, resolve, and determination to secure the bright future that we all seek. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, the future that we envision is outlined in Grenada's 2020 to 2035 National Sustainable Development Plan, a first draft of which is currently the subject of various consultations across the nation. The draft plan was formulated on the basis of the contributions and feedback received from Grenadians across all strata, including youth, civil society organizations, government ministries, the private sector, non-governmental organizations, and the general public. The ongoing sectoral and public consultations will help further refine the draft plan. The final Cabinet-endorsed national plan will be officially presented in Parliament along with the 2020 budget. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, the National Sustainable Development Plan will implement a systematic and coordinated framework to guide Grenada's sustainable development agenda during the 2020 to 2035 period. The plan focuses on promoting balanced, harmonious, and inclusive development in Grenada, and as such, is anchored in the three pillars of sustainable development, namely the society, the economy, and the environment. These three pillars are in turn underpinned by the cross-cutting issues of governance and institutional arrangements. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, the plan articulates the following vision statement for our country, known as Vision 2035. Grenada, a resilient and prosperous nation with a conscious and caring citizenry, promoting human dignity and realizing its full potential through sustainable economic and social progress for all. Vision 2035 is to be realized through the attainment of three national goals. Goal number 1, high human and social development, putting people at the center of sustainable development and transformation. Goal number 2, a vibrant, dynamic, competitive economy with supporting climate and disaster resilient infrastructure. Goal number 3, environmental sustainability and security. These goals, and by extension, Vision 2035, can be achieved only through individual and collective, concrete and strategic actions. All ministries, departments, and agencies in the public sector must work collaboratively on this national endeavor. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, the policy agenda guiding the general path followed by my government for fiscal year 2020 will be aligned with the goals of the National Sustainable Development Plan. In fact, the national plan will provide the strategic direction for all national budgets for the ensuing years through 2035. Operationally, the strategic priorities of the 2020 budget and the work programs of all ministries, departments, and agencies are framed within the context of my government's medium-term agenda, which guides public sector implementation of the strategic actions that are aligned with the goals of the national plan. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, in keeping with the goals of the national plan, the theme for this session of Parliament is Towards Vision 2035, empowering our communities, growing our economy, protecting our environment, strengthening our institutions. In this context, I present the broad strategic priorities for 2020, broken down into 4 thematic areas, the first of which is empowering our communities. Health. My government will continue to accord priority to improving our healthcare system in order to meet the healthcare needs of all Grenadians. My government will also intensify actions to promote healthy lifestyles and preventative health care with the aim of tackling the effects of non-communicable diseases, which create a burden for both individuals and the healthcare system. Significant progress is being made with the National Health Insurance, which is helping my government accelerate the implementation process. Priority will also be given to upgrading health facilities with the aim of improving the delivery of public health services and health outcomes in general. Special attention will also be paid to integrating climate change considerations into health policies and interventions and heightening public awareness of the link between climate change and human health. Education. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, my government will continue to make every effort to strengthen the management and leadership of the Ministry of Education. Emphasis will also be placed on continuing to build the capacity of our educators to improve the functioning of the education sector and its education outcomes from early childhood through tertiary level. An all-out effort will be made to create higher education opportunities by providing scholarships, supporting systems and institutions that foster the development of critical skills, and offering the relevant training needs to effectively navigate life and work in the 21st century. Emphasis will also be placed on increasing the use of technology at all levels of education system and on upgrading educational facilities across our tri-island state. Indeed, my government is well on the way to providing all public schools with Wi-Fi connectivity through the Caribbean Regional Communications Infrastructure Program, CARSIP project, which also involves 2 other regional countries. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, my government will continue to prioritize programs aimed at empowering young people and creating employment and entrepreneurial opportunities for them in order to reduce the number of at-risk youth. Preparations are well underway for celebration of Youth Week later this month, and we expect to engage thousands of youth, involving them in various activities during that period. Through the well-established programs such as Aspire, Project Reach, Project Fly, Empower, Youth Bits, and Imani, my government continues to create pathways and opportunities for young people to realize their full potential. These programs are helping large numbers of young people achieve Caribbean Vocational Qualification, the CVQ, in such areas as food and beverage and commercial food preparation, as well as provide skills training in general construction, the hospitality industry, small business development, and management. Many successful participants have also secured startup grants for their business operations. Additionally, my government will focus on developing a more coordinated approach among the many programs and agencies that deal with youth development and empowerment issues. This, we anticipate, will help improve results and achieve the maximum impact from these important programs and interventions. My government is also preparing the next generation of parliamentarians. This year, the parish and national youth parliaments were re-established, providing an opportunity for more than 200 young people to be trained in parliamentary procedures, with 30 of them participating in the first and second sitting of the National Youth Parliament. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, it is well known that sports provides a safe place for children and young people and promote community development, support healthy lifestyles, and generate economic activity. Priority will therefore be given to the implementation of the national sport policy in the coming year. Additionally, my government will continue to focus on strengthening the institutional structures for the development of sports and on upgrading sporting facilities across our tri-island state. Vulnerable persons. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, with the establishment of the Special Victims Unit and Hotline, significant progress is being made with the investigation and prosecution of various sexual crimes and cases of domestic violence and child abuse. My government will continue to devote attention to strengthening our child protection systems and institutions and to significantly reducing the number of children and youth who suffer from various forms of physical and mental abuse and emotional trauma. The Home for Girls, which will be opened before the end of 2019, will represent a major step forward in the provision of institutional support to protect our young girls. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, my government will also accord priority to enhancing the delivery of programs geared towards improving elderly care. The geriatric programs that are currently being executed will be assessed with a view to strengthening their effectiveness and impact. Ensuring that our elderly enjoy a decent standard of living is also of great importance to my government. As such, my government will soon commence payment to retirees who were appointed to an established post in the public service after February 22, 1985, retired at the age of 60, and provided a minimum of 26 2/3 years of public service on a permanent and continuous basis. The payments will be considered an advance on any sum payable once a definitive position on pension is determined. My government remains firmly committed to settlement of the pending pension and gratuity issues. My government will also place greater emphasis on strengthening the institutions and agencies that provide support services to other vulnerable groups in the society, such as persons with disabilities. Gender. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, gender mainstreaming, gender equality, and the social and economic empowerment of women and girls are key priorities of my government. Last year, Grenada ratified the International Labour Organization's Convention 189 on the rights of domestic workers, which paves the way to improve conditions for workers in the domestic and paid care sector who are predominantly women. My government will also continue to focus on addressing the social and economic factors that give rise to gender disparities. Housing. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, my government is strongly committed to addressing the ever-increasing demand for safe and affordable housing. Work is progressing well on the housing projects in the parishes of St. Mark, St. David, St. Patrick, and St. George, and in Carriacou. Housing brigades are also continuing their important work of repairing, constructing, and rebuilding houses for vulnerable citizens across our tri-island state. Next year, work will commence on the St. John Housing Project. Additionally, plans are underway for private sector-led middle-income housing. In fact, my government is currently holding discussions with a private developer. My government will also pay special attention to heightening awareness of the need to incorporate environmental and climate considerations into housing construction. In providing affordable housing solutions, the ultimate aim of my government is to build strong homes and, by extension, strong families and communities. Culture. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, one of Grenada's attributes is its rich culture and heritage. 2019 was a particularly successful year in this regard, with several of our artists advancing to the finals of the International Soca Monarch competition in neighboring Trinidad and Tobago, and masterfully showcasing their individual talent at the event. Furthermore, with the crowning of Mr. Killer as the International Soca Monarch, Grenada has made a bold statement on the global stage about the maturity of our island soca. A number of artists have also taken the flag of Grenada to countries around the world where, from a musical standpoint, Grenada had no prior visibility. We are indeed proud of our artists and their stellar accomplishments. The vibrancy of our country's culture was also on display at Carifesta 14 in Trinidad, and once again, as their 120 participants made it known through song, dance, and other art forms, Grenada's rich traditions and heritage remain alive and well. These successes underscore the need for my government to provide the enabling support that will harness our cultural and creative talent and preserve our rich culture. In 2020, greater emphasis will be placed on strengthening our cultural and creative industries. My government also intends to identify a greater number of cultural ambassadors who can promote Grenada's culture at home and abroad. Labour. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, enabling the creation of sustainable jobs and providing opportunities to promote entrepreneurship continue to be strategic priorities for my government. Last year, a total of 155 workers were placed in employment overseas through the Ministry of Labour. Additionally, 147 Imanis found permanent employment in the private sector. Overall, unemployment in our country is steadily declining, which is most welcome. My government will continue to provide an enabling environment that facilitates continued reduction in unemployment, especially among our young people. The vibrancy of the construction sector continues. A number of projects are already on stream or in the offing, particularly in the student housing and general accommodation sector. These projects not only demonstrate the growth and development of the country, but also have a positive impact on unemployment, particularly on the construction, culinary arts, and services sectors. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, an important issue facing us as a nation is the changing nature of traditional modes of work and employment. Indeed, rapid technological advances have profound implications for the workplace, the workforce, and the nature of work itself, skills, and wages. Cognizant of the 21st century realities, my government will initiate discussions with social partners on the changing nature of work, on how we can collectively prepare for the changes that are occurring with lightning speed. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, the second thematic area deals with growing our economy, agriculture. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, there are 3 ongoing projects. The Climate Smart Agricultural and Rural Enterprise Development Project, known as CEAP, the Youth in Agriculture Project, and the Regional Agricultural Competitive Project, AgriCom, which are aimed at increasing youth participation in agriculture, boosting agricultural production, and by extension, creating jobs and improving livelihoods, especially in rural communities. My government will continue to focus on expanding youth involvement in the sector, building the capacity of farmers and workers in the sector, improving agricultural production and productivity through the use of technology, increasing value added of agricultural products, and bolstering the sector's resilience to climate change. Greater emphasis will also be placed on strengthening the linkages between agriculture and other sectors, in particular tourism and manufacturing, and on improving food security and the nutritional content of the foods we consume. Tourism. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, my government will continue to focus on developing the tourism sector by tapping into new destinations, upgrading sites and attractions, training and certifying more industry workers, supporting more entrepreneurs in the sector, and facilitating the integration of technology into our tourism products and services. Young people in particular will be afforded the opportunity to receive training and acquire skills through the recently launched Hospitality and Tourism Department at the T.A. Marisho Community College, which seeks to enhance the quality of our human resource in the tourism sector and, by extension, the tourism experience offered by our country. My government recognizes the growing importance of heritage-based tourism and the attendant need to ensure sustainable development. Recognizing also the need for a multi-ministry approach, we will move aggressively to develop tourism sites in order to improve our tourism product and offer visitors an enhanced experience in pure Grenada, while at the same time ensuring that we preserve our pristine environment. An assessment of the heritage sites, including forts, aqueducts, and windmills, will be conducted soon by consultants from Cuba. Additionally, we will host a team of experts from Jamaica's Community Tourism Initiative. In the coming year, my government will also focus on supporting the mainstreaming of sustainability practices throughout the tourism sector, with a view to striking an appropriate balance between social, economic, and environmental issues, as well as promoting greater involvement in local communities in the sector so as to create jobs and improve livelihoods in villages across our country. Strengthening linkages between tourism and other sectors such as agriculture, health, culture, and sports continues to be a strategic priority of my government. Enabling access to funds for sectoral improvement is another strategic priority of my government. In the 2019 budget, we allocated $3 million to be used as soft loan facility provided by the Grenada Development Bank to small hoteliers. We are pressing ahead with the promotion of this facility and working more closely with indigenous hoteliers to ensure that they take full advantage of this loan facility to upgrade their facilities and increase their competitiveness. The business environment. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, improving the environment for large, medium-sized, and small businesses to thrive and prosper remain a key priority of my government. Through the ongoing implementation of the National Export Strategy launched in 2017, the development of businesses in the service sector is coming into sharper focus. The strategic aim of this effort is to boost the exportation of other services so as to complement the main service-related exports, mainly tourism and educational services. In the coming fiscal year, my government will intensify efforts geared towards improving the government-to-business interface through greater use of digital technologies. In this regard, a concessional loan from the World Bank was recently approved to implement the Digitization for Resilient Government project with the objectives of developing an enabling environment to modernize the delivery of public services and leveraging digital technologies to provide select public services. Furthermore, greater attention will also be paid to creating an investment-friendly environment conducive to both local and foreign businesses in areas that can contribute to economic diversification and transformation. Promoting increased value addition of our local products and exports, as well as strengthening support services, especially to small businesses and young entrepreneurs, will also be areas of focus. My government will also step up the pace of ongoing initiatives aimed at taking full advantage of new economic opportunities that utilize our country's natural resources, such as renewable energy, hydrocarbons, our ocean space, and our cultural assets. My government also attaches great importance to expanding training programs in order to ensure that Grenadians, especially our young people, possess the requisite skills for employment in the new and emerging economic sectors. My government remains fully committed to climate-smart agriculture and rural enterprise development program, CEAP, which is intended to help reduce poverty and improve rural development in Grenada. Through this $38 million project, government is providing capacity building support, technical services, and finances for rural businesses, and is also helping farmers improve environmental sustainability by adopting climate-smart agricultural practices. Infrastructure. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, well-developed infrastructure is critical to support economic growth and development. In 2018, significant investment was made in upgrading the water supply infrastructure in our country. My government will continue to invest in climate-resilient infrastructure, and in this regard, will forge ahead with activities to advance the development of the Climate Smart Cities project that is being funded with grants from the Green Climate Fund. My government will also step up efforts to improve the transportation infrastructure by focusing on traffic congestion and road safety. A transport board is already operational with a mandate to deal with these and other matters. Infrastructural upgrades will also continue at both the Maurice Bishop International Airport and the Lauriston Airport. Attention will be devoted to continuing work aimed at improving physical planning to support Grenada's sustainable development priorities. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, I will now turn to the third aspect of the theme, protecting our environment. My government will continue to take active measures to protect and preserve our natural environment in the coming year. In the coming year, my government will focus greater attention on building awareness of the urgent environmental issues to be addressed now and in the years ahead. It is most disturbing that some of our people are still engaging in environmentally harmful practices such as the indiscriminate burning of bush, inadequate energy conservation, water wastage, and careless littering, such as throwing garbage out of vehicles. Environmental experts are now talking more about climate crisis than climate change, and we must all do our part to protect our environment. as the climate crisis the world now faces poses a much greater existential threat to small island states such as ours. With this in mind, my government will step up public education campaigns to highlight the importance and necessity of sound environmental practices. Efforts to strengthen Grenada's resilience planning and resilience building agendas will be tackled with a renewed sense of urgency. In keeping with the Non-Biodegradable Waste Control Act, my government has successfully implemented the ban on styrofoam material. Our attention is now focused on the ban on single-use plastics as part of the overall effort to ensure that we engage in sustainable waste management. We are cognizant of the need to protect and preserve the environment while at the same time minimizing the impact on businesses and consumers. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, in July last year, Cabinet approved the implementation of the Caribbean Oceans and Aquaculture Sustainability Facility Coast, which offers parametric insurance for the fishing industry in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. The Coast Facility will provide coverage to enable fisherfolk to recover quickly from weather-related events, and in so doing will ultimately protect the food security of fisherfolk and promote sustainable livelihoods in the fishing sector. In January of this year, a climate change policy assessment was conducted by the International Monetary Fund, which provided concrete recommendations to strengthen efforts to build resilience to climate change. In addition, only last month, the Integrated Coastal Zone Management Bill was debated in the Honourable Houses of Parliament. This bill is aimed at strengthening the legislative framework for integrated coastal zone management and protection in Grenada. Strengthening disaster preparedness and management will also be a top priority. A disaster risk financing strategy is currently being developed with technical assistance from the World Bank. Indeed, disaster risk financing is a key component of comprehensive disaster risk management. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, my government will also continue to advocate more forcefully in the international arena for greater financial and technical support for resilience building in Grenada and other small island developing states. Although our contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions is minuscule, we are disproportionately impacted by the effects of climate change. My government will also continue to demand a fairer and more morally just global system in which the countries that contribute the most to climate change do more to help those countries that are least responsible for this disruptive phenomenon. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, I now turn to the final aspect of the theme, strengthening institutions. Governance in the public sector. Improving transparency and accountability across the public sector are of paramount concern to my government. We will put stronger measures in place to curb practices that fail to promote personal and professional ethics. In the coming year, public procurement systems will be bolstered through stricter controls and monitoring. Additionally, my government will be undertaking a public expenditure review with the aim of taking concrete actions to strengthen expenditure controls, as well as the efficiency and effectiveness of public spending and the institutional mechanisms for expenditure management. Institutions such as the Integrity Commission, the Office of the Ombudsman, and the Public Accounts Committee will continue to carry out their important mandates, thereby contributing to the promotion of higher ethical standards and good governance in the public sector. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, it is important to stress that good governance, which essentially deals with rules of behavior, applies to all institutions across our country, not only to the public sector. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, strengthening national security to address new and emerging security risks and threats, and by extension, provide a safe and secure environment for citizens and visitors alike, remain a top priority of my government. Likewise, institutional strengthening of Her Majesty's prisons to address such pressing issues as high rates of recidivism, capacity constraints, as well as overcrowding, remains an important item on my government's agenda. The Ministry of Legal Affairs will be strengthened so that it is able to adequately focus on national priorities in keeping with the government's legislative agenda. Moreover, my government will continue to make investments to upgrade court infrastructure, as well as to support the use of modern court technologies to increase efficiency. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, my government remains committed to strategic engagement at the bilateral, regional, and international levels, as well as with the Grenadian diaspora. My government is closely monitoring developments in the United Kingdom as it prepares to leave the European Union. Indeed, together with other CARICOM countries, as well as the Dominican Republic, Grenada is taking proactive measures aimed at the conclusion of an economic partnership agreement with the United Kingdom that is similar to the current agreement with the European Union, in an effort to maintain preferential terms for trade in goods and services. Conclusion. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, I have set out my government's strategic priorities for this third session of the 10th Parliament, the details of which will be fleshed out in the 2020 budget statement, which will be delivered by the end of the 2019 fiscal year. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, it is important to emphasize that this throne speech is not merely a traditional practice. It plays an extremely important role in setting the legislative agenda for Parliament, the policy agenda for the executive, and the general direction for the government. As my government moves forward with this strategic agenda for nation building, it will do so in partnership with other stakeholders in the development process, including the private sector, civil society, trade unions, churches, youth, and non-governmental organizations. My government is fully cognizant of the fact that there must be collective responsibility for, as well as shared commitment to, advancing Grenada's sustainable development agenda. The Holy Scriptures of Genesis, chapter 12, verse 2, states, and I quote, "And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing." Let us therefore move forward as the great nation that we are, towards the realization of Vision 2035, with collective confidence and strength, confronting our challenges and seizing our opportunities. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, may God guide you in all your deliberations and render you equal to the sacred trust bestowed upon you. And may He continue to richly bless this great nation of ours.
All right. All right. That was the throne speech delivered on Friday by Her Excellency Governor General Dame Cecile LaGrenade at the ceremonial opening of Parliament. Folks, I'm pressed for time here, but I'm going to try and sneak some of your comments in here. And I'm only doing this because you are entitled to your freedom of speech. I think so. I think that still exists. Here we go. John says, ha, 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 the day made my morning. Was that the comedy section? No, John, that was the throne speech. Anthea says, I'm trying to be optimistic, but all this my government and what seems like pipe dreams gives me a pessimistic sense of believing all this hype, my government talk. Kipling says, a great speech full of great expectations with no hope of implementation as long as the selfish, egotistical party government is in control. Promises are a comfort to a fool. Thank God, not all of us are fools. Anthea then says, see what I mean? She is stumbling on simple words. This was written for her. This is an educated woman. So my take is she is not believing it herself. Good morning, Carla. Good morning, Terry. Samantha McFarland says, how could these people stand there and talk, acting well to the people of the world? John says, Anthea, she probably only got the speech when she got there, given to her by the spin doctor. Good morning, Samantha. Patsy Emmons says, my government, me foot. Is you alone, government? Stoops. Good morning, Lydia. Anthony Howard says, it bothers me that the government of Grenada still looks at traditional tourism, fun in the sun, as the way to development, when they have seen the success of tertiary education, that is, SGU, has had on the economy. Grenada, as a destination for tertiary education, can bring more foreign dollars into the economy and provide much more opportunities for Grenadians at home and in the diaspora to help in the development of human capital and sustainable economic capital for our tri-island state. Grenada as a destination for tertiary education and alternative energy and marine biology is a Grenada that would not be running to developed nations with a hat, begging for handouts. Using the little land we have to build resorts, let me try that again. Using the little land that we have to build resorts, leaves very little for us to build tertiary institutions. So says Anthony. Good morning, Richard. Alana Morris says, I have much to learn. Looked up the position of the GG, is the Queen's representative and reports directly to Her Majesty. What is she referring to when she says, my government? And what does England have to do with Grenada now? John says the Queen doesn't even speak this long. Ernesto says, since the GG been in her position, what did she do to better the lives of Grenadians? I can't name one. Complaints been hand-delivered to the GG on the corruption of this administration, and up to now, not even a response from her. John Nozinek says, Ernesto, who pays the piper, etc. Grenada Sunshine says, time will surely tell. Okay, and good morning to you as well, Lincoln. Now, folks, I'm not even going to take a commercial break here because we're starting to run out of time. I want to go to a piece that those of you who were with us on Thursday morning probably saw this. Every Thursday, Allan Bierzynski joins us, and this week, he spoke about a number of things, but this week his focal point was the statement issued by the Integrity Commission regarding the investigation into the Marketing and National Importing Board. Let's listen to this for a few minutes.
Well, there is literally so much going on, one wonders where to start. But I thought about history and its lessons. One of the reasons that some writers have ascribed to the fall of the Roman Empire is government corruption and political instability. So I'm going to read this quickly. It said that ineffective and inconsistent leadership only magnifies the problem of the difficulty of governance. In particular, being the Roman emperor had always been a particularly dangerous job. But during the tumultuous 2nd and 3rd centuries in the Common Era, it nearly became a death sentence. Civil war thrust the empire into chaos, and more than 20 men took the throne in the span of only 75 years, usually after the murder of their predecessor. The Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal bodyguards, assassinated and installed new sovereigns at will, and once even auctioned off the spot to the highest bidder. The political wrath also extended to the Roman Senate, which failed to temper the excesses of the emperors due to its own widespread corruption and incompetence. As the situation worsened, civic pride waned, and many Romans lost trust in their leadership. Now, I want you to think carefully about two issues here. One is that the emperor's personal bodyguards, I presume when they realized that they were so trusted that nobody could rotate them out to take holiday, that they even auctioned off the spot to the highest bidder. Interesting, isn't it? And then the Senate failed to temper the excesses of the emperors due to its own widespread corruption and incompetence, of which more later, since the Integrity Commission apparently is something they might have wanted to utilize in those days with respect to widespread corruption and incompetence. No, so that is one of the reasons suggested for the demise of the Roman Empire. But closer to us now in the 21st century, during the 20th century, we saw examples of totalitarian philosophy, whether communism on one side of the spectrum or fascism on the other side of the spectrum. Frankly, there's little to distinguish between the two, except that some wear black shirts and some wear red shirts. You'll see some of them demonstrating in Grenada to this day wearing their red shirts, and berets too. Now, fascism is a totalitarian philosophy that directly opposes democracy. It argues that the nation, as embodied in the state, is supreme. Fascists further argue that only one party can represent the whole nation and direct the state. Free elections, free speech, and free markets have to go. That's exactly what the fascists of the 20th century did. Those fascists ruthlessly suppressed the press, placing mass media under government supervision and control. 20th century fascists also extended state power to the economy. Private property was respected merely in form, but the truth is that industrialists, bankers, unions, and others acted in accord with government coordination and according to government plans. Many individuals got rich under fascism, but only with the approval and assistance of the state. Now that preamble brings us into the breaking news that on the 1st of October, the investigation into the Marketing and National Importing Board entered the... Well, I prefer inquiry, but I see that this one is spelled like the American version of it, inquiry. Anyway, according to this publication, release, or whatever it is that was sent to me, I don't know why people have just start joking me, honestly. Anyhow, the investigations into the management and operation of the Marketing and National Importing Board entered the inquiry stage on October the 1st, 2019. Not surprisingly, the inquiry is being held in camera and involves the full commission, that is the Integrity Commission.
Hold on. Amy, when you say inquiry, when you say in camera, explain that you mean it's a private...
Behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors. Okay, yes, sir.
I wonder why. Anyhow, the investigations involve the technical team. We don't know who they comprise, but they were gathering information through the collection of information, conduct of interviews conducted with current and past board members, farmers, government ministers, and past and present officials of the Ministry of Finance. Wonderful. And these investigations are being conducted pursuant to the Integrity in Public Life and Prevention of Corruption Acts. Now, I'm not certain if there are two separate acts or if it's a combined act, but no doubt we'll hear more about it. So, for the first time in Grenada's history, there was collaboration among the Integrity Commission, expertise from law enforcement agencies, and the public sector. You will recall that this inquiry was announced on the 7th of September 2018. So they've taken a long time. But what I find intriguing is the terms of reference. Frankly, when you look at the terms of reference, it would suggest to the casual observer that the specificity, I always have difficulty with these multisyllabic words, but I wouldn't put myself on the public stage such as going to a funeral in Jamaica in order to show that I can't pronounce words with a lot of syllables. However, can you imagine that included in the terms of reference, they wish to determine whether or not there was effective communication system between the CEO and the board, and between the board and the line minister. That immediately suggests to me that the persons who were appointed to the board had no idea what was going on. And frankly, I will call for all board fees paid to them during the period of the inquiry ought to be returned, because clearly they weren't doing the job that they were put there to do, unless it is that the job they were put to do was not to conduct oversight of the operations of the board. Can you imagine they want to determine, this is one of the terms of reference, to determine what are the roles and responsibilities of the board and the management of the MNIB? I mean, frankly, the mind boggles. Then they want to determine the circumstances under which stores and equipment of the public entity were acquired/disposed of by the board and its line minister. Really? It gets better. They want to inquire into the causes and circumstances of the fires at the offices of the MNIB River Road building location. Not the fire, the fires. Now tell me, I thought we had a Royal Grenada Police Force. If there was any suspicion that the fire was not accidental, that matter should have been investigated long ago. I don't know, frankly, whether or not we can conclude that during the preparatory stages for this inquiry, the Integrity Commission was not fully informed by one or more whistleblowers, which has determined the construct of this inquiry. Can you imagine one of the points to be inquired into is to determine whether there are conflicts of interest with respect to roles and responsibilities of all past and present accountable officers and management thereof, to determine whether or not audit exercises were conducted on an annual basis. No, you need an inquiry to tell you whether or not audits were done. Joke they're making. To determine the conduct of any person or entity falling under the purview of an Integrity Commission in relation to the MNIB, and to determine whether the conduct of such person or persons may be considered dishonest or conducive to corruption. This is remarkable, frankly.
This is Grenada.
And finally, to determine whether the board kept proper books of account and a record of minutes of the meetings. I repeat, everyone who served as a member of that board during the period under review ought to be required to return the fees that they received, because in my view, they were not entitled to those fees because of their failure to discharge their responsibilities under the Act. I'm done.
You're done. Well, Mr. B, I'll tell you, you really jumped the gun on me this morning, because I had intended to read that statement eventually. And as I sit here listening to you, I ask myself the question, which I'm going to ask you right now. How much confidence did that statement give you, along with the terms of reference, that the outcome of the inquiry will be one that can be respected?
It says, on completion of the inquiry, the Commission's report shall be made available to the persons with oversight, ministerial and administrative responsibilities for the MNIB. The last time we checked, that person is the Minister of Finance. So based on past performance, you may feel free to draw your own conclusions.
All right, Mr. E.P. And by the way, folks, for those of you who would be interested in reading that statement in its entirety, as well as the terms of reference, you may go to the GRENADABROADCAST.com website, where you'll find both in their entireties. Okay. Couple of comments, Mr. B. They've been listening to you out there. John says, A.B., you're so right. History repeats itself. Sean in the Azores, who, by the way, just survived Hurricane Lennox. Sean says...
Lorenzo?
Pardon me?
Lorenzo?
Yeah. Sorry, did I say Lennox? It's Lorenzo, I'm sorry. Sean says, beautifully eloquent spoken reminder of history. Or is it prophecy? If we did not learn from history, it will be a future. So says Sean. Anthony de Rig says, quote, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. John comes back here and says, A.B., it's just another showcase investigation to make people think it's being seriously looked into. That is, it's a joke. What say you, beat these folks?
I think I can agree with every one of those sentiments.
Okay, so in other words, you're
was a calypso about all the world at the stage. It was Valentino, I think, and we are all just players. He was drawing originally from William Shakespeare.
So essentially, AB, the public concern about the validity of this investigation or inquiry, it seems to me that people are just thinking of it in terms of a sham. There's no confidence out there. And
well, I don't know. I think it's early days yet. They say that they're committed to expediting the inquiry stage in accordance with the principles of natural justice. And they say the report will be made available to the persons with oversight, ministerial and administrative responsibilities. So that is where the whole issue will be subject to public scrutiny or not. So I am not prepared to make a decision or to offer an opinion at this time, other than to refer to the track record of the individuals responsible for oversight, ministerial and administrative responsibilities for the MNIB.
Okay, so track record or not, whether the public takes those into consideration, you're urging, and I agree with you, you're urging people to look, just don't jump to conclusions. Wait and see what comes out of this inquiry.
Indeed.
Indeed. John says, AB, is that natural Grenadian justice? Anthea Rillo says, life is a stage and we are the actors. Yes, it was Tony who sang it.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm corrected.
All right. All right, AB. So much for the inquiry into the Marketing and National Importing Board. A couple of other things. You notice I sent you a little list last night. I have a couple of things up my sleeve that I'm going to push up your sleeve this morning. And I'm sure you noticed on Facebook over the past couple of days that there's been a big celebration about the fact that the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who was on a recent visit to New York, actually had the honor and privilege of ringing the bell to begin trading on Wall Street. You know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I don't know what the big deal is. I have seen that anytime somebody, it could be in entertainment, a politician, a diplomat, frankly, it's neither here nor there to me. I don't see what's the big deal.
So that's a non-issue as far as you're concerned?
Yep.
All right. Next. Yesterday, you may have heard, I think this was on the news. What are you laughing at?
Yeah, go ahead. Yesterday, I may have heard.
Yes. Yesterday, you may have heard, and last night seen on the news, that the rift between Member of Parliament Tobias Clement and the new National Party appears to be growing. I think that's the way one of the news stations here put it last night. Now, we have known for quite some time that this man seems to have been at odds. I mean, it's come out in Parliament on more than one occasion that he's at odds with his party. Two, are you taking his most recent actions seriously, like failing to show up at that meeting? Was it yesterday or the day before? Are you taking those seriously? And what do you read into it?
What actions did the Honorable Tobias Clement take?
He was supposed to attend a constituency meeting.
Yeah, well, if he didn't attend it, that means he took no action.
Okay, he took no action, but I think it was Roland Bola last night who was saying that, shush me, Mr. Bola was saying last night that, you know, that would have been a very good opportunity for him to come forth and express his concerns, whatever they were, and he didn't take the opportunity, didn't use the opportunity.
Well, the General Secretary of the party, I'm not certain, without conducting an inquiry of my own, as to what his particular roles and responsibilities are. Nevertheless, I don't know that there's a lot they could do, because the reason that Mr. Clement serves in Parliament is because he was elected on the platform of the New National Party.
Apparently twice.
The party which won all 15 seats in Parliament. Now, I suppose that the NNP can expel the honorable member for St. George's Northeast from their party, but they cannot expel him from Parliament, not under our existing constitution. No, I can't remember whether it was on this forum or another that I suggested a long time ago that what Mr. Clement ought to have done, given the repeated disregard and perhaps even the contempt with which he has been treated by the members of his own party, he ought to have resigned his position as a party member and gone to Her Excellency the Governor General and suggested to her that he commands the majority of the opposition members in Parliament, that being one, and therefore stating to her that she needs to do what she's supposed to do under the Constitution, which is to appoint a leader of the opposition. I'm sure he could do it, money.
I was hoping you wouldn't go there. They also reminded viewers last night that there is such a thing as a disciplinary committee. And apparently they're looking into Mr. What are you smiling at? They're looking into Mr. Clement's actions.
What discipline they could bring to bear for him? When you have a former party operative who has caused the state to expend hundreds of thousands of dollars in the 3 years that he ceased to be a member of the upper house, what kind of discipline you're talking about?
John Nozinek says, read Tobias, as there is no recall, what can they do? He was elected, full stop. Essentially,
correct.
That's what you're saying.
The people who are responsible for electing him did not consider whether or not he could represent them. They elected him because of the color of his shirt.
Period.
Period.
You still done, Mr. B, or is there anything else you have up your sleeve?
Well, we had some showers of rain for which I think we are all grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, up to the time I came in here this morning at about 5 to 9, still very overcast, and it looks like it's going to continue to be that way, but I think we're going to start having some clearing this afternoon. Very bleak looking out there.
The truth is that these irregular rainfall patterns are not helping anybody. You may have heard recently that drought conditions are projected to affect us for the next several months. Some islands more than others. I'm not certain why that should be the case, but nevertheless, for people who are involved in agriculture, it's not good news.
Yeah. Well, there's one bright light at the end of the tunnel, and the hurricane season has theoretically less than 2 months to go.
Listen, don't put goat mouth on us, you know. October is not all over. It hasn't been that way for many years. So they say you go until the end of November now before it's officially over. But I am reminded that on November the 18th, 1999, we were hit by the Hurricane Lenny that was going the wrong direction.
Well, you know,
we were hit by a surge generated by Lenny.
You know, AB, yes, I remember that surge very well. You know, at one time, people used to worry about the fact that, well, theoretically, the season ended November 30th, but we're seeing a continuance now into December and January. But not only that, like you mentioned, Lenny was an issue where something actually turned around. This year, we had a storm go sit in one spot, made himself very comfortable for about 40 hours. Now,
Unprecedented.
Pardon me?
Unprecedented.
Absolutely. And now we just had another storm start his routine trek across the Atlantic and decide, let me hang a right and go visit them guys in the Azores. You heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It's very unusual.
very unusual, very hard to predict.
But in the meantime, as we were discussing last week about climate change and global heating, because we stopped the warming, is heating now. But the people who have vested interests are prepared to ignore the science and continue to trot out foolishness. So leave them.
Just before we go, Allan, a couple of comments that just came in here I want to share with you. Richard St. Bernard says, maybe he's not that smart. Amy, responding to your comments there about Tobias Clement.
The member for St. George's Northeast.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't comment on his intellectual capacity. I mean, if you think about it, he managed to draw a ministerial salary without being a minister from 2013 to 2018.
Well, you know something, John agrees with you, because John just responded to Richard here by saying he's smart enough to still get paid. Okay, Allan, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. Another week, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, bye now.
All right. All righty, folks. All righty, there you have it. That's what took place on Thursday morning here with Allan. And once again, for those of you who have never ever joined us for Good Day Grenada, man, you don't know what you're missing during the week. Every Thursday, Allan comes on, has his say, and always very stimulating, very stimulating. Now, let me tell you something. For any of you who are thinking about doing a program like this, be prepared for the inevitable. You would not believe the challenges we have, and this morning is no exception. We were scheduled to have at 11 o'clock this morning Mr. Cajecton Hood, who is a former Attorney General of Grenada. And he's going to be here. He's going to be here. But he's not here right now. It's 12 minutes after 11 o'clock. Should have been here at 11 o'clock. And I called him a couple of minutes ago, got no answer, and I went, oh my God. I'm going to have to call on you folks to bail me out, you know, keep me going until 12 o'clock. Well, he did call me back just a few moments ago, and he said that somebody popped in, so that delayed him somewhat. And he is on his way and will be joining us very, very shortly, okay? So yes, you're going to be hearing from Kaji this morning. Now, he's coming in here, by the way, to talk about the statement that was issued this past week by the Office of the Integrity Commission, and the terms of reference for that investigation into the Marketing and National Importing Board. He, in particular, wants to talk about the code of conduct. The code of conduct for the Integrity Commission. And that's going to be a very interesting conversation. So please, although he's going to be a little bit late, please bear with him. At least he did let us know that he's on his way and should be here momentarily. Don't know what airline he's using to get here, but he's going to be here. All right? So hang in there. That, by the way, gives me some time to just digress here for a minute and say good morning to the folks who have joined us. Lincoln Depredane's there, Chester Simon, Tessa Barry, Josephine Blash, Ron Redhead, Henry Steele, Rodney Wade. All these folks have joined us over the past little while. Also gives me an opportunity to go back to some of the comments that were made a little while ago regarding the throne speech. So here we go. First of all, Claude Pudner says, George, is she for real? She only talks of her government. Are we included? Just asking. So says Claude. You know, that's one of the things, one of the traditions that we have hung on to. My government, my government. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. Can't we just dump those traditions and get real? I mean, this is 2019. We're approaching 2020. Times have changed. Why do we have to stick to those old traditions? And are we really independent? Just asking, just asking. So that was a comment from Claude. Tessa is saying good morning. Ron Redhead says, George, I am impressed with his assessment of the MNIB. This requires a national conversation. Remember at the top of the program this morning, I did tell you guys that yesterday I published an article, I think it was yesterday? Yeah, published an article that was written by Cajecton Hood, former AG. And he dealt with the investigation and in particular the code of conduct. That's why he's coming in here this morning. Well, Mr. Redhead, that's what we're going to be discussing this morning, so hang in there. I'm anxiously awaiting the arrival of this gentleman. There is a comment here, and this, I think it's the first time I'm seeing this one, but I so do appreciate it. Ernesto Jose has a comment, but before he makes his comment, he puts up a disclaimer. I have never seen that done before, but I really do appreciate it. So thank you very much, Ernesto. And now let me share your comment. He says, these are not the views of the program. All right? Thank you for making that clear, Ernesto. Then he says, in my opinion, I think the GG is a failure to the people of Grenada, the Constitution, and all that it stands for. I think the GG was nominated by the PM and continues to show her loyalty instead of to the country. I also think she's incompetent and doesn't have Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique's best interests. Once again, that is my opinion, not the opinion of this program. Thank you very much, Ernesto. Thoughtful of you. So we scroll down a little bit here, and then there's a comment from Mr. Bob Marichaux. Mr. Marichaux says, in reply to Mr. Bierzynski, forms of government and the MNIB saga, I will ease his confusion on the different forms of governments by reminding him of the quote of the late Sir Winston Churchill, a former UK Prime Minister, and it goes like this. Democracy, presumably parliamentary democracy, is the worst form of government, except all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. Yeah. So those of you who were watching Allan a few minutes ago, you know what Mr. Marichaux is talking about. Rodney Wade, good morning to you. Paley Darbo, good morning to you. Devon Phillip and Agatha Jordan. Hey, the whole gang's here this morning. Nice to see you guys. Ernesto comes back. He says, if Toby resigns, can be dangerous for NDC because he will now become the new opposition leader and will have to choose 3 others which can put NDC in a spot they will not like being in, where he may not choose any member of the NDC. Your brain's working overtime, isn't it, Ernesto? John says, are we independent? Just remove the in. That's your answer. Yeah, a little while ago I asked if we really are independent. John says remove the in. There you have the answer. We are dependent. All right, folks. I think that's it there on social media for the time being. Okay, so we continue to await the arrival here now of Mr. Cajecton Hood. I always have a tough time pronouncing that that word, C-A-J-E-C-T-O-N, Cajecton Hood. Okay. It's the only person I know with that name, only person. S. Albert Lagarde has also now just chimed in. Thank you very much. Kind of late, but like they say, better late than never. Folks, let's take a little break here now, and then hopefully Mr. Hood will be here when we get back.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
You don't know how many hurricanes will be coming this season, so you need to be prepared. At Hubbard's Hardware and Building Supply departments and Food Fair supermarkets, everything from canned foods, flashlights and batteries, to plywood, tarpaulin, lanterns, roof repair kits, water tanks, etc. are available. For over 90 years, we've helped you prepare for and recover from storms. Hubbard's Hardware, Food Fair supermarkets, and the Grenadian General Insurance, an integral part of your hurricane preparedness plan.
Hey, what? I just came from the land and this sign here caught my eye. What's that sign about?
Someone must have asked GRENADA to move a pole. But you know, there's no space reserved on the side of the road for planting poles. So GRENADA has to get permission from landowners, and that can take a lot of time.
Oh, GRENADA asked me to help them contact my neighbor Ben about planting a pole on his land. But Ben passed away. His children own the land, but they all live abroad.
That's why GRENADA needs customers to inform them in writing at least 3 months in advance.
3 months? All that?
It seems like a lot, but think about the time it will take for GRENADA to find and get permission from all of Ben's children. And sometimes moving one pole requires you to move the pole before, the one after, plus the wires that support them on the ground. That means even more landowners to find and get permission from. Then GRENADA needs to schedule their teams and notify customers about any power outages.
Well, I need the pole on the farm moved, so I'm going to write GRENADA a letter now.
GRENADA, energizing our Grenada.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Alrighty, folks. Here he is. He's got a smile, and are you apologetic?
Yes, I'm intensely apologetic. I am.
Just give me a hand here. Let me slap you. Yes. So
I accept my punishment.
we made up. We made up.
It was a work item. And,
Yeah.
in the state that I'm in, beleaguered by the efforts of the administration to stifle my bread, I had to grasp at it, as you will understand.
You too, eh? Poor guy. Yeah.
Because my major clients have been ordered to find other lawyers.
I see. I see. But you're still standing strong.
Of course, because my bread comes from above, not from
Amen.
the administration.
Amen.
But
Amen.
yes, so I'm trusting him.
Kaji, listen, we got what? I had planned on giving you an hour this morning, and you know what? We still may wind up doing that. But I want to be your student because you asked me to publish an article for you a couple of days ago. I read it, and I went, hey, wait a cotton-picking minute. It was profound. It was profound, and it made me do a lot of soul-searching, a lot of thinking. And I am hoping that whatever time we have here this morning, you're going to use it to educate me, and by extension, the people of this country. Okay?
George, as far as I can, I came here with no documents, my hands, and
Yeah.
I'm going to do what the best I
Well,
can.
I've got the stuff here.
Yes.
Let me ask you this right off the bat. The code of conduct applies to people in government and the police officers and civil servants and all of that, right?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Does that mean that the members of the Integrity Commission are also subject to the code of conduct of the Integrity Commission?
Certainly, certainly. If you look at Schedule 1, it lists all of the persons who are referred to as persons in public life. I'm referring to Schedule 1 to the Integrity in Public Life Act.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the members of the commission had to do the declarations on their assets.
Okay.
Yes. Well, we drafted that 2013 Act. I was Attorney General at the time.
Oh, so you were part of that act,
I was part of the drafting.
the drafting of that act.
Under instruction by the.
I was just going to ask you, were you pleased with what you drafted?
Well, in some sense, in the sense that I'll tell you what, it gave, as I tried to say in the article, some form of check and balance regarding the exercise of powers by the executive. We don't have anything close to what the United States has. Because if we had that, there would have been impeachment many years ago. We don't have that. But at least the Integrity in Public Life Act, I am happy to say, does provide some relief for concerned citizens. And it is very wide, as I try to mention, in the sense that under the section with respect to the Code of Conduct, it gives any person, whoever you are, whatever status in life, you have a right to make a complaint regarding a violation or perceived violation of the Code of Conduct by a person in public life. And that's the reason why it is so essential that the commissioners of that Integrity Commission be persons above reproach and persons that the public has confidence in. I know that there has been a lot of complaints regarding the chairmanship of the Integrity Commission, and I'm going to be coming straight off the bat. Because she is the wife of a party member who has been there maybe longer than the Prime Minister. Yes? And there has been a lot of concerns raised about that. In my view, the advice to the Governor General regarding membership of the Commission ought to come from not just the NNP executive, but from, in my view, honestly, from a wide-ranging input from the community, from Parliament and these bodies. That's my view. And they ought to be, as in the state, the United States, everybody comes for public office, high public office, are presented to the Senate and to the House for debate. And you notice when people are nominated, they dig up all their past from since they were teenagers.
They put them through a ringer.
But we don't do that. We don't do that. And I'm saying for that important commission, for membership of that commission, these persons ought to have been paraded before the public, and persons should have been invited to make comments that would influence the recommendation for membership on that commission. I do not believe that as Grenadians we have studied that act properly, because I believe there is a tool, particularly now when you have no opposition in Parliament. Who is going to raise the concerns of the people?
Which brings into question the integrity itself of the commission.
Well, that's what you're touching on.
Okay.
As to whether or not you have a commission. Because if, I'm saying this, and that's one of the reasons I put in the article for the lack of complaints. If the public perceive that they are going to a body of persons who A, either will not act, or B, do not have the power to act, then they may not come. But George, you asked me a question just now regarding satisfaction, and I only did one part. That's the part of the act that I'm satisfied with. But the part of the act that I'm not satisfied with is that with respect to breaches of the code of conduct, there is not sufficient punishment or results from the breaches. From the breaches, because even if a breach is proven, all that the act says is that the commission will report it to the House of Representatives and report it to who. There is no provision that the commission's finding would be made public. That's one thing. And in terms of any punitive measure, there is none there. So the only measure there is the fact that there is a finding that you breached the code of conduct. And that's a part of it which I'm very dissatisfied with.
We're going to discuss that. Mr. Hood, oh, by the way, before I get too far behind, John wants to know, Mr. Hood, would or do the powers that be ever listen to the people?
Well, they are forced to listen to the people in a limited way every 5 years, but I think what we need to create in Grenada is a culture where they are called to answer on a regular basis.
Well, this goes right to the next question here. Kipling Francis in New York is asking, does the Integrity Committee or Commission have subpoena power? If not,
they have subpoena powers.
Why not?
Once they start investigations. And interestingly enough, in the MNIB inquiry, and again, I disagree with that line, and the matter is on appeal at the Court of Appeal. It appears that the judge found that they have a power to investigate without a complaint even. Because in the MNIB matter, they decided to launch an inquiry based on a newspaper report. And I went public and I said to them, there are reports in the public, in the newspapers, about the conduct of the Prime Minister. Why don't you investigate? Deafening silence.
Conduct of the Prime Minister, what? Is that one, for example, the fact that he is still in charge of the MNIB while the investigation is going on?
Well, that's one part, but I wasn't focusing on that. I was talking about other items of his conduct.
Talk to us, Kaji. Tell us.
Look, George, I was abhorred. I mean, abhorred. When I saw a clipping of a press conference, a post-cabinet briefing, when Kalisha Faria asked him a question about his personal life, yes. And his face turned dark, and he said, "You can't go there." That's ridiculous. That is absolutely, and I'll give you a reason why it's absolutely ridiculous. Yes, absolutely ridiculous. You are a public figure, and George, Look, let me break it down. I was in charge of a body which was responsible for anti-money laundering, terrorist financing.
I remember that.
And I recall that spouses and wives of persons in public office are called PEPs, politically exposed persons. And there is a specific regime that the financial institutions have when treating with PEPs. So if your wife is no longer your wife, she's no longer a PEP, it means the public needs to know. So it's not a matter of your private life, it's a matter of law. And if he does not understand that, then what does he not understand? What does he not understand? You can't duck these questions at all. You can't duck them. So the reality is that by acting in that way, I am saying publicly that reaction ought to be censored. And ridiculously, a couple of members of his cabinet, I understand because I'm not on Facebook and Twitter, went on the internet defending that action. It's indefensible. Indefensible. And particularly when the allegations are that you have a relationship with a member of your ministry. George, I wrote to the Prime Minister and I put the allegations squarely to him and asked him to answer.
Did he?
He has not answered. So what did I do? I sent the letter together with an official complaint to the Integrity Commission citing the breaches of the Code of Conduct against him and other persons and asked them to investigate. I've made an official complaint pursuant to the Integrity in Public Life Act. They wrote to me saying they received my letter and they're going to deal with it in the next meeting. 2 months have passed. I am waiting.
Margaret is listening to you in New York, and she's asking, how do you propose that we create that culture where people hold public officials accountable?
George, we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. We have to start, in my view, we start with legislation. So I believe we have to put in place legislation and put in place oversight bodies. We don't have those oversight bodies. And we have a start with the Integrity Commission. So I'm saying the first thing we do, we make sure that the Integrity Commission is properly staffed, that the commissioners are acceptable, trustworthy persons that people have confidence in. We strengthen the integrity in public life legislation. So it means that breaches would have a stronger punitive effect. And we start from there. That's my view. We have to make a start.
Claudette Joseph. Claudette, you know somebody named Claudette Joseph?
Yes. We have a matter which we have to fight in court just now. She doesn't know yet.
Oh, she doesn't know?
Yeah, no yet. I'm representing a client.
Claudette, you taking her to court?
I think he knows. I think she knows.
Claudette says, morning, George and Kaji. Kaji, thanks for initiating the public discourse on this matter. It's good to have nonpartisan voices speak on these issues. And by the way, sorry for making you late.
Yes, you made me late, Claudette.
The cat's out of the bag. Yeah. So, the public discourse is underway.
Yes, and I'm glad for that. George, let me say something quickly. To all the members of the public, I am open. My life is open to criticism. Go ahead and criticize me. I have no problem with that. I have given my opinion from my heart because I believe as a patriotic Grenadian, I see things wrong, I need to raise it. George, I have children who will grow up in Grenada. I have to protect the heritage of Grenada. You cannot be destroying our institutions in that way. You can't. I cannot live in Grenada and allow it to happen. And I stand here, let me be criticized, attack me, do whatever you want, but you are going to hear me until I have a voice.
Renewed Purpose says, our people are so ignorant, and many were defending the PM's actions on that day, talking about the Calistrophe area, I guess. I just had to educate them nicely. So sad, Mr. Hood.
It is.
And renewed purpose goes on to say, preach it, Mr. Hood, preach it.
But George, and I mentioned that in a public discourse already. Do you know, George, that in the United States, I know clearly from New York, there is a phenomenon called dating down. You can't do that in an organization. It is grounds for summary dismissal. George, summary dismissal. I have a friend of mine from Grenada who was summarily dismissed for that. He started a relationship with somebody in one of the chain stores, and he was regional supervisor, and he was called in and he was summarily dismissed. He lost all his privileges. Because the view is that it corrupts the organization. People will be given favor for extras, so to speak. You can't have it.
John Nozinek says, but was it called an inquiry? So do subpoenas still count, as it's not an investigation?
No, I'm saying that the issue has been raised in an official complaint to the Integrity Commission. I'm waiting on the deliberations of the commission. They can say to me they're not going to have an investigation, and I know what I'm going to do then. Or they can say, yes, we're going to investigate. And then the subpoena part comes in where people will be called in to ask questions.
Kipling Francis says, many people keep underrating the PM. He knows what he's doing. He just doesn't give a darn.
That's true.
Because he knows he has 14 stooges and a bunch of imbeciles to defend him.
Strong words.
I like the way he spells imbeciles anyway.
Strong words. They will try to defend him. But George, I'm confident that know what I'm doing. There's going to come the time when he'll be indefensible.
You know something that's interesting? It's amazing just how people will defend their party in Grenada, regardless. They don't agree with what they're saying. Look at what's happening in the United States right now with the Republican Party.
That's what I'm about to say. A lot of them don't agree with what he's done, but they defend it for the party stick. And the reason is because there is gain in the association with the party. So they look at the risk to the party.
Ryan Jabon says, Grenada's Integrity Commission is an independent body established by the Integrity in Public Life Act 24 of 2013 and also oversees the prevention of corruption. Effectiveness, debatable. Okay, see, a lot of people out there, you know, while it sounds good to have an Integrity Commission looking out for our good, you got to have trust, confidence in that commission.
Yes, but the effectiveness again, George, the effectiveness can only be triggered when persons become knowledgeable of the contents of the act and start acting and using the trigger points.
Thank you for giving me that lead in. I'm going to get to that in just a wee bit because I did make some notes based on that article that you published.
Yes.
And this morning, when I started the program, I tell them people over there, read that before you come. Okay? I made some notes. But there's a note here from Margaret. Margaret says, all well and good to put the legislation and structures in place. But how do you get John Public actively engaged and involved? Because if the public is not engaged, it renders legislation and structures moot.
Nugatory. Exactly. And that's a reason why I decided to begin this dialogue. That's why I entitled it Integrity and the Law.
Mr. Hood, do you know why the churches are not saying anything?
I was wondering that because, by the way, do you know that he has at least 3 members of his cabinet who profess to Christianity? I'm talking about so-called evangelical Christianity.
Yeah.
At least 3.
Yeah.
So maybe ask them. And I think maybe the churches are afraid of the repercussions.
Yeah.
And of what benefits they perceive they might lose.
Yeah.
And they are forgetting their roles. I remember, George, I was doing some work with the unions, and the administration asked one of the pastors of the churches to go and try to intercede. And I promptly said to the union leaders, you should tell that pastor that he should be speaking to the Prime Minister about his moral life and stay away from these dollars and cent stocks.
You brave?
Yes.
Terry Phillips says, everybody watching the corruption and can't do nothing.
Not can't. Don't do much. Don't do, not can't.
Peter Bishop has a question for you, Mr. Hood. He says, is it not correct to say that while you were Attorney General, Superintendent Peer was the head of the FIU?
Still is.
Would you not consider Superintendent Peer as a politically exposed person? Would you agree with me that his appointment to that position is a breach of the law as it relates to the FIU?
He's not, let me start. Yes, I agree that he's a politically exposed person. He was not confirmed in the post, he was acting in the post. The question of whether he should have been acting in the post is the issue.
Okay. Now, I want to go now to my piece, folks. It's my turn. Just give me a break. Kaji, I pulled out the next 3 excerpts from your article, and I'm quoting verbatim. The present reality is that Parliament has provided the ordinary citizen with a method of checks and balances on the conduct of all persons in public life, including the parliamentarians. I'm really surprised and saddened that as a nation, especially in a period where we have no parliamentary opposition for over 6 years now, that more patriotic Grenadians have not used the act more frequently or at all. It has been suggested to me that maybe some of the reasons for this are as follows. 1, lack of knowledge or understanding of the act and its processes. 2, the fear of repercussions from the current administration. 3, lack of trust of or confidence in the composition of the Integrity Commission. After all, the chairperson is the wife of a long-standing NNP member and operative. And 4, a sense of apathy which presently overshadows our citizens. All of them, Kaji.
My view.
All of them.
My view. So we're starting with number 1. That's the reason why I said let's start somewhere. You see, there's an old saying: it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness.
Yeah.
So let's not be cursing the darkness. Let's light the candles.
Ryan is listening to you in Orlando. He says, Cajay, what happens when there's a blatant breach of integrity in public life and corruption in Grenada?
We complain, and there's going to be a swell, a rise. It happened in 1979 with the guns. We don't want the guns, but we want the public to rise up and say, we are not going to stand for that. I think we are underestimating the strength of people who are motivated and educated. I think that's what we're misunderstanding. And I believe we need to just get down there and educate people. It's like a drop of water on a stone. George, what you're doing is creating an impact. Don't be disheartened. The Chinese say if you drop 1 drop of water on a stone every morning, it's going to make an impression. Look outside your window, George, where the rain falls, and there's a drain that's been made by the water dropping. You don't see the effect of each drop of water, but cumulatively over a period of time, it makes an impact. Yes. I have faith. Look, George, let me tell you publicly, I have faith in people. And I saw it happening in Grenada in 1979. People will rise and protect themselves, defend themselves when they understand, when they are motivated enough. So that's the job we have.
Ron Redhead Question for Mr. Hood. What say you on the Anti-Corruption Parliamentary Committee? Also, I need some clarity as it relates to who instructs the DPP to cause an investigation into corruption in public life.
The Anti-Corruption Committee in Parliament, I have no faith in that. That's just so. What you have to look
Facade.
for, yes, what you have to look for in these committees is independence in terms of the appointment, and independence in terms of the tenure. That strengthens it. Yes? And if there is any weakness there, of course, a strong-headed leader is going to run over that. The DPP now, the DPP does not have any jurisdiction with respect to that. The DPP's jurisdiction is invoked if he has evidence or if he has probable cause that a crime has been committed. So if a complaint has been made to him regarding the occurrence of a crime, then he now independently, based on the Constitution, you can't challenge his decision to indict or not to indict.
Okay.
That's him. But he must get the information. You must come to him and say, look, this is what we have. We need you to make a decision. And he's supposed to independently look at what is presented to him and decide whether or not there is probable cause that a crime has been committed. Nobody is supposed to interfere with him at all. And this is one office that has a strong independence. Our case law has established that already with Malcolm Holdip and so on. Right? There was a matter which went to court regarding that, way up to the Court of Appeal. The DPP, you can't touch his age of retirement. You can't touch his salary. You understand? You can't touch his decisions. That is an independent office. And that's one of the reasons I have said public, I did an interview on Friday, that this Integrity Commission investigation in the MNIB is unlawful and unconstitutional, because they are purporting to look over what the work of the Director of Audit is in the MNIB. And the Director of Audit's post is another very independent post in the Constitution. The Director of Audit's post is enshrined in the Constitution, Section 82 and 87.
Like the DPP.
Similar to the DPP. And the Integrity Commission purports to look over the accounting standards and so in MNIB. When the MNIB Act gives the Director of Audit superintendence over that, that's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. The reality is that the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance did not oversee the MNIB as he should. That's the reality. He did not do his work. And he must stop trying to find people to point finger at. He should come to the people and say, look, I have failed you. I went to the Governor General and took responsibility for MNIB. These things have happened under my watch. I'm ashamed. I do not want MNIB anymore. I'm going to give it to another minister. But he goes about pointing fingers at everybody and saying, not taking licks alone and all this kind of foolishness. That's nonsense.
So there's got to be a fall guy.
There's always a fall guy. There's no fall guy here, because when you really ask you to read the MNIB Act, in the MNIB Act, he is chief cook and bottle washer. He appoints every one of the commissioners. He's the one who decides what commissions the marketing board makes on sales. They have to ask him. He sets the rates. He's the one who personally has to look at the draft plans for the coming year and approve them. So he gets involved in the planning and in the implementation of the planning. Everything. The powers of the MNIB's board are circumscribed by his powers, subject to him. So who can he blame?
But this is not the only instance where you're seeing that sort of authority exerted. I mean, take a look at what happened recently with the police officers. Yes. He decided, hey, they're going to get paid and lose
Yes.
flee.
Because I guess they have secrets to cover for him, so he has to pay them. that's his inner circle who knows all of his dirt, so he has to pay them. He has to have them around him. An exclusive bunch of people who are confidential.
Ron says, thank you for the clarity. Sharon Roberts says, good morning, Gigi, and my favorite lawyer.
Yes, Sharon.
I was at a workshop which was facilitated by the Commonwealth Institute where they spoke to the laws pertaining to FIU and the fact that the director should not be a politically exposed person.
Right.
And Mr. Peer was present.
Well, he's a pip.
Okay. He, as the husband of a minister, is politically exposed. So what do you think should be done about this?
Well, it's out there in public, so it's for the Prime Minister to make a decision.
Okay. But Kaji, there's a lot of things that are out there in the public and nothing happening. Well, I know you keep talking about that drop of water on that stone that's going to make an impact.
Yes, but George, let me put it another way. What then can be done? There is an appointment made. Yes? Persons have spoken. It's out there in the public. It is for the executive to make a decision. The question is, how do you force them to make a decision?
Tell me.
And that's the issue.
We're all ears.
But that's the issue. Somebody can very well maybe mount a challenge in a court of law.
How many people have the money to do that, Kaji?
Judge.
You're working pro bono?
Judge. I'm dealing with the entire pension matter together with Jimmy Bristol. And the unions can't pay us. We've not asked for pay. I'm dealing with what I call the illegal removal of public servants' salary in November last year. And they can't pay me, I have not asked for a cent. There are other lawyers, I am sure, in Grenada, who will rise because the calling of the lawyer, honestly, and people have a bad view of lawyers. Yes, there are persons among us who would have done things wrong. In every profession you find people who do things wrong. We are not perfect. But the calling of the lawyer is to make sure that law and order pervades the society. There are many lawyers who will be willing to assist, I'm sure. I am sure, Judge.
Kaji, tell them to come forward. Boy, you'll make this country the happiest nation on earth because people are frustrated.
George, people have to be bold enough because just as how Sharon Roberts knows me personally based on our experience, there are people who know lawyers. Speak to them, they will rise. I'm saying that on behalf of my people in the law profession. They will respond, Judge.
I want a list. Anthony Howard says, welcome, Mr. Hood. I want a list. Are you now willing to take a more active role in the transformation of our Tri-Island state? I guess that's what you're saying.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best.
Renewed Purpose says, Mr. Hood, let us start a petition to get legislation rolling. Enough is enough with this lawless PM. John Nozinek says, Anthony Howard, you can only open people's ears and eyes. What they do then is up to them.
Yes, but what they do can be encouraged and shaped by persistence. That's my belief.
Kaji, let me get to excerpt number 2 from your article. Quote, note that the Act does not inquire into anyone's source of wealth or assets, so it only captures what has been declared upon the first declaration and thereafter. So, wherever you got whatever is now declared, whatever you compiled over the years in public life, however you got it or compiled it, it is washed and made clean and genuine for the purposes of the Act. What a magic trick. Nice one. You're so articulate. Let me hear your...
Judges, as I said it, I was just thinking and reflecting. The fact is that the Act asks you to declare. And the Act only came into force in 2013. So it means when I declare my assets, what the Audit Commission is looking to see is if that is a truthful declaration. Question, if I have 15 accounts offshore, how do they find that out? but I'm not going there. But if I declare I have $19 million in assets, whatever it is, property, money, and whatever it is, there's no question from the commission as to where I got it from. That's just what I'm saying. I declared it, and it's entered as mine. Nobody is looking beyond my first declaration, and that's what I'm making people understand. So when somebody jumps up and says, I've declared X million dollars, so what? That's my question. So what? Does that mean that this is genuine money that came from genuine sources? No. No. It's just a declaration, which you say is a truthful declaration of what your assets are. Because at that point, the legislation is concerned about going forward. It doesn't take you backward. And that's the point I'm making. So do not allow anybody to fool you by saying I've declared X dollars and therefore, I've done a declaration.
John says, so we have to believe these declared assets are true.
Well, the commission is tasked with looking at the declaration, yes? And it's not a question of believing that the assets are true. It's a question of believing if that's the totality of the person's assets in the first case. If you understand the point I'm making. So that's all it is. So if that's what John is asking, yes. So if the person's asset is more than what is declared, then that's criminal. There's criminal sanction for that. But again, I repeat, the act doesn't go into the source of your assets. But if people don't understand, they believe that the assets declared means that the assets are clean. If you understand the point I'm making. It's not, there's no guarantee regarding the source. The act covers the genuineness of the declaration as separate and distinct from the source of the assets. It's a totally different issue.
You know, Kashi, this is a hell of a letdown because I remember the days when we first heard about the launch of this Integrity Commission because this place was so plagued with corruption. Hearing that there's now an Integrity Commission in place brought a lot of hope, you know. Okay, maybe some of us hoped a little bit more than others, but people thought that things would be a little bit better and people could be held accountable and so on and so forth. Kaji, I sit here listening to you this morning.
Reality is shock. But George, in response, we have not used, to be fair, we have not used the act.
In other words, a lot of the blame has to fall on us.
On us. That's the reason why I said in my article, I believe that the more powerful part of the act is the one with the code of conduct.
By the way, he insisted. I had to stay up until after midnight last night reading this code of conduct.
Well, you're reading slow.
Yeah.
You see, so George, that's the reason I'm saying the second part on the code of conduct is what to me is more empowering. And that's the reason why I said, look, it is a joke to have thousands of declarations filed and you only have about 4 or 5 people to go through all of that and classify, and no, you're not going to get by.
Yeah. Well, here's one. Renewed Purpose says, George, we need a class once a week with Cash in the Hood. You got time?
Well, if it's in the public good, I have time.
Well, you got a platform, sir. You got a platform.
If it's in the public good, because, George, I've been the beneficiary of my country over the years, and we have to give back.
Here's another. We have some creative people out there. Here's another one. John says, do apartment blocks in Brooklyn show up as declared assets?
Well, I don't know if they were declared. They ought to be declared.
Is there any way to know if they are? You don't know because you're just not curious, or you tried to find out and you couldn't?
No, but the point is that the declarations are not to be disclosed under penalty of law. So that's the reason why I'm saying the key lies with who is in the commission. Either they are not perceptive enough or they deliberately ignore certain things. So for this integrity commission to work, that's why I said earlier on, you must have people there with acuity, mental acuity, and people who are honest and people who will look after the affairs of the people. Because what happens, you're going to frustrate the entire purpose and you're going to use the commission as a cloak of more wickedness and corruption. Because all I'm trying to do is appear that there is integrity, the cloak of integrity. But it is covered by the fact that you don't have commissioners that are doing their work.
Mr. Hood, I got one more question, one more excerpt I want to share with you. This one makes my blood crawl. I quote, "The reason why laws are passed is to control the conduct of citizens in society. This is one very good reason why we need to reflect very seriously upon the persons that we put into Parliament on election day, because they make decisions that affect us to the very core." All right? It goes on to say, Mr. Hood, when you elect a group of persons that are controlled by one man, then you have effectively and ignorantly put in place a dictatorship.
I stand by my words. And that's the reality. Because look, George, I was reflecting over the last week with respect to the United States, and people say that the President of the United States is the most powerful political figure on the face of the earth, yes? And it's because of the might of the United States. But when you compare the power of Donald Trump with the power of Keith Mitchell, and I'm talking about just within the confines of the government, the powers that Donald Trump has in the United States pale in comparison to the powers that Keith Mitchell has in Grenada. He appoints the Governor General. He decides who is in charge of which part of government. He appoints permanent secretaries. On and on and on and on. Donald Trump doesn't have that kind of power. So it means if he wants, he can control every single thing in Grenada by pressure or by his appointments. And that is the point that I am making. A person who sits as Prime Minister in Grenada under this constitutional construct can be a very powerful dictator within the context of Grenada. He literally appoints the commissioners there. He appoints the people in the Public Service Commission. He has a majority of 3-2. Who's the chairman of the Public Service Commission? Another NNP person who ran for NNP. He ran for office for NNP and he's the chairman of the Public Service Commission. And there are 5 appointees, 3 of them by the Prime Minister and 2 by the unions, and decisions are made on a simple majority. So he will always have his way in the Public Service Commission in appointing people.
Renewed Purpose says it is alleged that the PM has shares in a few businesses or projects in Grenada. Are those declared? Oh, you wouldn't know.
We would not know again. It is something where we have to make serious moves to have proper persons in that office.
Sharon says Donald Trump is learning from KCM.
I don't know who's learning from whom.
Kipling Francis says, Mr. Grant, don't you think the people should take some blame for depending on others to fight their battles while they just relax and wait for results? Isn't it time everyone gets up and time we start a GoFund? Not about the GoFund, but about getting up and get. That's what we were saying a little while ago, Kipling. We have to take the blame. You know, how many of you people who are listening to me now are willing to go and study that article that Kaji wrote? It's on the GRENADABROADCAST.com website. How many of you would be willing to take a look at the Code of Conduct for the Integrity Commission? And then how many of you would be willing to confront your member in Parliament and say, hey, cut this out?
Yes. I agree. That's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think, George, I'm going further. Why are these persons sitting in Parliament, sitting in Cabinet, and not challenging their leader regarding his conduct? Why are they sitting and accepting it and they know it is wrong? So I am putting it out there to the people of Grenada. Will you vote any of the 15 of them again? I'll ask the question again. Will you return any of the 15 to office?
Hold on. Stop. Stick a pin, because that in itself is another issue. You're talking about the integrity of this commission, but something else whose integrity is now being challenged is our voting process.
Yes.
Big time, Kaji.
Yes.
And it's known by the CARICOM Secretariat, it's known by the Organization of American States, it's known by the people of this country. They bitched and continue to bitch about the electoral process. The stories abound about bad things that have been happening in our elections. So how can you tell me to wait until the next election and then go and vote them out? All of us may go and vote, and they're still back in office, Kaji.
No, George, I'm just saying this. We have a system in place now. And I am saying, right now, let us plan to use that system as it is.
Okay.
Yes? That's the reason why I'm looking towards the next elections. I'm not saying you have to wait necessarily. I'm saying the worst case scenario is that come next election, the people of Grenada should remember the fact that these so-called representatives of these constituencies did nothing to try to halt the corrupt practices. Remember that when your time comes. But all for now, George, I'm advocating that we continue what we are doing. You never know what's going to happen. But at least you have something guaranteed by your constitution. Some time to come. So at least that is there. Let's not lose sight of that. But let us continue to do what we are doing now. I'm just raising that right now in the minds of the people.
Davidson Patterson says, Mr. Hood just realized the shortfall in the country. He was Attorney General. Now he's barking.
Well, I don't understand what that means.
Sharon Roberts says, they stole the election. Better late than never. Dicey Grenada electoral process, but nothing is done about it. And
George, it comes back to legislation and putting things in place.
Renewed Purpose has come to your defense here, responding to Davidson Patterson. Renewed Purpose says he left because he wanted to stand up.
I don't respond to that. The point is that the Inter-American Commission did mention regarding one aspect of elections, which you know, George, regarding campaign financing. We discussed that before.
The OAS and CARICOM,
yes.
they both did.
Yes. But look to see if there's going to be any legislation put in place to deal with that. There will not be.
Exactly.
There won't be.
Okay. Kaji, let me tell you what. We've now gone 15 minutes past our sign-off time.
So sign off.
No, I'm not going to sign off without saying to you, Kaji, look into that camera there.
This one here?
Yeah. Talk to the people. I know you're trying. I mean, I've been trying. A lot of us have been trying to educate people, to open up people's eyes to what is going on and the dangers that could happen as a result. Talk to them casually, mobilize them.
George, it's going to take some time, but as I said earlier on, we have to make a start. I said, well, one person commented about me being Attorney General. Yes, I was Attorney General. Yes. That does not take away my right to speak at this point in time. I welcome whatever criticism anybody wants to throw at me. That's fine. If I believe I need to defend myself, I will. But there's a bigger point here. And I saw, George, I lived there during the revolution. And I saw the impact of education on and I don't want to use ordinary in a derogatory sense. I saw the impact of education on ordinary people and how the sense of self-worth and values grew. And I am a believer in educating people. As much as they can take, as much as you can give, I believe in educating people. And I think that as we continue, as you continue, George, as other people continue, other people will rise. There is going to be a groundswell. People will respond, and I have faith in that.
We're going to mark your words.
I have faith in that. So I believe it is going to be a process, and I believe that when the Grenadian people begin to understand their heritage and what it is in there for them, they're going to start making informed decisions. I think they do not yet, most of us do not yet understand that we are selling out our heritage for whatever little gifts or whatever the case might be. Not understanding what we can do to change Grenada. Because right now, we have a welfare state for young people. That's the reality, you know. In the bigger countries, there's a welfare state for old people and unfortunate people. We have a welfare state for young people. That's what's happening. Our young people are getting handouts. That's what's happening. The MNIB program is a handout program. And I understand the World Bank and IMF have talked about the amount of money that's going on to Trinidad. It is a handout, just to try to stem the gap and to try to block the fact that you are not creating any employment for young people that they can aspire to. So you pay them some money and with no purpose, they go and they get money at the end of the month and they spend it in rum and partying and so on. That's what it is. And that's the stark reality. The scholarships that are created for our young people, when they get to their degrees, they don't stay in Grenada because there's no job in Grenada. So they find somewhere else to go and work. How many of the persons that are educated by our scholarship programs come back and are put into the country? And that's what the government needs to answer. So getting scholarship for young people, that's all right. That's only a percentage of persons who are academically inclined. And a high percentage of them are going outside to get jobs because there are no jobs here. All of the projects, George, that we have started in Grenada, the hotels and so on, how many of the employees there get any middle-income jobs? They are waiting tables, cleaning bathrooms and bedrooms and making up beds. So what is there? What is there for Grenadian people? And we talk about our economy. So George, those are my concerns.
The one that's booming?
Well, Beast made a mockery of it. So there are concerns, and I think what I'm saying is resonating with you there. You understand what I'm saying. Yeah. They understand exactly what I'm saying. So there we are.
Thank you, Cash. And you know, in the last year or so, I've seen you a couple of times in here, and I'm hoping to see you a little bit more frequently because the people out there need to hear what you're saying. They really do. And better yet, they need to act. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to confront your member of parliament. And by confront, I don't mean go fight. You meet him on the street, him or her, let your feelings be known. Let them be known. Put them on notice. put them on notice. Bottom line, folks, while you may be benefiting today from a little 2-week-a-year work or scholarship for your child or something, or a little, what do you call the food thing?
Hamper.
A little hamper and stuff like that. There's a lot more to life than that. There's a future at stake. Future. Sharon Roberts says, not only are there no jobs for young people, but when they come back, the older people in positions do not want the young people who are more educated than them in the workplace. I remember I was brought back to this country by a man you might know, Herbert Augustus Blaze. When I came back here, man, a young man met me on the carriage and told me, go back where I come from, I don't belong here. The man asked me to come and help rebuild the broadcasting system. Go back where you come from, there are a bunch of boneheads out there, you know? But the majority of Grenadians are not like that.
I agree.
They're not.
I agree.
Kipling Francis says a little slap now and then might be good. Okay, Kashi, please come and see us again. And I do appreciate your time.
When you invite me, George.
Kashi, do I have to, please, do I always have to invite you? I mean,
Yes, it's
you know
your establishment. I have no part in it.
But I have an open door policy, and I like...
Your gate was locked this morning. I'm only here because of my persistence.
He says my gate was locked.
You don't have an open door. You don't even have an open gate policy, but you have an open door policy.
Kaji, I have explained to you that I have a neighbor who has 9 goats, and the goats come in and eat
that's an excuse.
everything.
That's an excuse why you have a closed gate. You're going into reasons, not the fact. The fact is that you have a closed gate.
You're too much of a lawyer for your own good. Thanks a lot, bro.
Yeah.
Ryan Jabon says, bring Kashi back real soon. I like him. Yeah, we will. Okay, John says, Mr. Hood says it as he sees it. Yeah.
My daddy.
So, you what?
My daddy.
Your daddy? You know, boy, people like you and me will always be in trouble because we speak what's on our mind.
That's not trouble.
Well, we'll always be targets.
Well, yes.
Okay.
No problem.
But you know what? I'm still here.
No problem.
By the grace of God.
I have told people that have asked me if I'm not afraid. I say, look, I have a time to run. When my time is up, I can stop it. And nobody can curtail my time. Nobody.
Yeah.
That's my faith. Yeah. I have a course to run. It's preordained. When it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
And nothing that anybody can do can interfere with that, George. That's my belief.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter who it is, may not like me or whatever it is. You cannot do anything about it. You have to be allowed to do it.
Let's keep on trucking.
So,
take it easy. Former Attorney General Cajecton Hood, taking us now to 23 minutes after the hour. Keep your tail quiet. Hang on there for a sec. Folks, I'm not even going to go to another commercial break. I'm just going to pull the curtain down here because I really do appreciate the fact that you guys have taken the time. 24 minutes more than we should have this morning. So I'm just going to go directly to our parting word from the Holy Scriptures. Luke chapter 9, verses 23 and 24 says, Then he said to them all, Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will save it. I didn't know that we would have the closing words we just had here this morning, Kaji and myself. I didn't know. But I've shown you this over and over again, how God works. He helps me to choose the scriptures that I read on all of my programs, and they couldn't be more appropriate. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will save it. My dear friends, that's going to do it for the Sunday edition on the 6th of October, Sundays with George Grant. Thank you very much for joining us. And please be sure to join me tomorrow morning. We have a new feature starting tomorrow morning at 9:30. Please join us, and every weekday for Good Day Grenada. George Grant sending God's blessings your way, and by his grace. See you tomorrow.